Hey everybody, it's Word Balloon and John Suntress here. Holiday weeks are in motion, and this is a weird time in the media where a lot of people check out, and even in normal non-broadcast capacity, people are kind of dead during the holidays. Well, not Word Balloon. I figured it's the end of the decade. Everyone's doing their decade end list, all that stuff. I'm not going to do a best of decade, but I am going to do some significant conversations that happened in the last 10 years on Word Balloon, and I hope you enjoy these looks back, because I think it gives us perspective of where we were, where we are, where we're going. And I think you're going to enjoy these conversations. As always, questions or comments about the show, reach me via email, john@wordballoon.com. Also, follow me on Facebook under my name, John Suntress, and the Word Balloon Network. I appreciate you listening to the show through the commercials. I know the commercials can be a pain, but they do pay the bills, so please don't fast forward and listen to all the commercials before and after this message. There might be one more before we get started. Thanks for listening. Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. We are wrapping up the year, and just in time to wrap up your last-minute Christmas presents as well. And rather than do a list of, the top stories of the decade that Word Balloon was involved with or covered, I wanted to give you a whole different collage of different things that happened in the last 10 years with Word Balloon. I have to admit, I was planning on having a bunch of new episodes to take us through the end of the year, but had a little minor medical setback last week. I'm okay. I want to stress that. Everything's fine. But they had to run some tests, so I lost a couple days with a 24-hour, 36-hour hospital visit. But things wrapped up nicely, and they just wanted to run some tests and keep me just in case anything was bad as far as a relapse of the infection. But good news, passed with flying colors, and antibiotics are knocking out whatever just cropped up. And, they said there might be setbacks throughout the year. This was the first big setback, and thankfully it was a small bump. So, but like I said, it knocked out a couple episodes that I had planned to do. We will reschedule and then talk to these people in January. Good news is, though, I got plenty of things I wanted to share with you again as we wrap up the decade. I'm with everybody else where it's like, well, isn't 2020 really the end of the decade? Isn't it from 11 to 20? But whatever. Everybody likes round numbers. It's okay. So, we're going to start things off today with a look at Marvel's involvement in media, which took on big, proportions throughout the teens, the tens, if you will, of the 21st century. And a lot of it, we're talking with Joe Quesada. 3 different conversations with Joe over the years, starting in May 1st of 2011. Then we will go to 2014 with a San Diego Comic-Con conversation in the halls of San Diego, right before Guardians of the Galaxy opened up. And who knew it was going to take the world by storm? Wouldn't you say that of all the Marvel movies ending with Endgame, that the biggest surprise and I think the biggest breakout of characters was clearly the Guardians of the Galaxy, Baby Groot, Rocket Raccoon. Everybody knows these characters. Gamora, Starman, Jesus, who the hell knew? This was the biggest, holy shit moment. Then we go a year later to Joe in August 3rd of 2015 to talk about more stuff. Not just Marvel movies, too. Television and animation, and, of course, the comics. And then we wrap up with the biggest shock of 2015, and that was the big announcement that Kevin Feige and Marvel made that the Marvel movie panel was no longer going to be involved with influencing the scripts and direction of Marvel films. That was a big shocker, because I think we were all very secure in the idea that the creatives on the comic book end were having good input. Nothing against Kevin Feige. To this day, non-disclosure agreements and those things have kept the real story from being out there. But clearly there was animosity between Ike Perlmutter, the main chief stockholder of Marvel, and Feige. And at first, Perlmutter had a lot of influence on what kind of movies could be made and couldn't be made, and had tight pull on the budget as well, apparently, and would nix things that he felt were too costly. Perlmutter is allegedly quoted as saying that women don't like superheroes, only men like superheroes. No, I don't want a Black Widow movie. Well, obviously good news, we're getting a Black Widow movie because Kevin Feige was able to go to the heads of Disney, and I'm paraphrasing what was said in the situation, but essentially pointed out to the heads of Disney, I've made you $7 billion. I don't want to answer to this guy anymore. And they said, done. And so Kevin Feige got his full independence. We got, from 2015 till Endgame, we got incredible Marvel movies. Obviously, Kevin Feige was able to go as big as he wanted to with all of these, and we're still seeing the reverberations. We'll see what happens, obviously, coming up with the movies that are already in development. Like I said, the Black Widow movie, the Doctor Strange movie, the Thor movie with Natalie Portman, Jane Foster taking over as Thor. I'm looking forward to all of it. I think it's great. Guardians 3, part of the plan as well, and certainly Eternals. So it's going to be a very interesting time. But it's great to look back now and see all that stuff. The reaction to the dissolvement or dissolution of the Marvel movie panel is discussed with Brian Bendis in a great conversation that I had with Brian just a month after that last conversation with Joe in September of 2015. And he couldn't say a lot, but I wanted to get his point of view of whatever he could talk about regarding the end of the Marvel movie panel. We got about a half hour of conversation out of Brian to talk about that. So that's what we're doing today, conversations with Joe Quesada and Brian Bendis regarding Marvel's involvement in primarily film, but also good television talk, animation talk, and the like as well. On today's Word Balloon. I hope you like it. Brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you, League, for your support via Patreon. It's the end of the year, and I thank you greatly for everything you do, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free, but if you like what I do here and want to help out the cause, you can subscribe to Word Balloon via Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Click on the ad for Patreon on the front page of wordballoon.com. It will take you to my Patreon portal. Is Word Balloon worth $1 a month to you? Is it worth the price of a comic book a month to you? If you think so and you can swing it, I appreciate the support and sponsorship from the League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon is also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. If you didn't know, Aftershock is having a big holiday sale on their online store. Everything on their online store is half-priced through the end of the year. Signed and graded comic books, graphic novels, convention variants, everything. Plus, you'll get free shipping on orders of $50 or more, shipping within the U.S. only. You can use the code HOLIDAY at checkout. And think about it, man. This is a great opportunity to dig into Aftershock's amazing library with tremendous creators, Marguerite Bennett, Cullen Bunn, Donny Cates, Tim Seeley, Matthew Klickstein, Garth Ennis, so many great creators and so many great books that are worthy of your attention. Go over there, go to their online store at AftershockComics.com. Again, everything is half price through the end of the year, and if you live in the U.S., free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Check it out. All the deals are waiting for you at AftershockComics.com. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. Some interesting conversations with Joe Quesada over the last 10 years. Starting things off on May 1st of 2011, a great talk. Joe, comfortable in his office, reflecting on his first 10 years as the co-publisher of Marvel, with starting with Bill Jemas, and then, of course, Joe taking over, editor-in-chief, and I'll tell you, it was a great conversation. Looking back and looking forward, lots of talk about the Marvel movie panel, about the Netflix television stuff, animation, and of course the comics. Joe Quesada from 2011 on Word Balloon.
Joe, now 4 months in or 5 months in, you are solely the chief creative officer for Marvel. I'm wondering how different the job is for you from the non-comic side than, say, it was when Avi Arad had the position and you were observing how he was working, having that title.
Well, Avi did an incredible job when he was here at Marvel, but it was also a different company. We didn't have so many of the aspects that we have today. So, while Avi was instrumental in licensing out our movies, we weren't really a movie studio. We weren't a television studio. We were dabbling somewhat in animation. So Avi's real focus was in building Marvel's movie licensing program and making sure that those movies were the best movies they could be. And he did that with tremendous success. I think arguably X-Men and Spider-Man, will be a crowning jewel of his achievements. He just did a fantastic job. But we're in a different place now as a company, so there's a large part of what I'm doing now as Chief Creative Officer that I sit back and I realize, you know what, I kind of have to build this position and define what it is, because it really is considerably different. I mean, I'm operating very much as a conduit between all the creative divisions at Marvel, and also a conduit between Marvel and Disney on many, many projects and occasions. So it's a little bit different. You know, back when I was doing the editor-in-chief job, I could always look back on Stan Lee, for example, as a role model and say, okay, I know how Stan did things back in the 60s and early 70s. How can I adapt some of those things into my particular, you know, time and place? Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different now with this position. It's really creating the role and defining the role, and hopefully I don't smell up the joint too much.
What's a typical day like for you in this sole role and not having to worry about maybe the day-to-day, you know, aspects of the monthly comics?
You know, it's a funny question. It's even a funny question in the way that it's phrased, because it's such a misnomer. I mean, there is no typical day. It's part of, for me, actually, the beauty of what I do, because I have such a short attention span that if my days were all pretty much the same or had a routine to them, I might not be able to do it, or at least do it to the best of my abilities. But my days are consistently different day in and day out. My hours are always different day in and day out. You know, every morning before my day begins, my wife has to grill me on exactly what am I doing, because she can't keep track of where or when I'm going to be, you know, during any particular day, because it isn't like, you know, Mondays are always the same and Tuesdays are always the same. It just shifts radically. So, you know, just taking today for an example, you know, I came in today, and at noon I had a luncheon with all our interns, our outgoing class of interns, which is something that I do for every outgoing class, where basically they get to pick my brains and ask anything about comics, or, you know, school or art or anything. And then after that, I did a big interview for GQ of Japan, which just happened a few minutes before you called. Fantastic. And now I'm on the phone with you. Then tonight I go home and I start working on a cover that I'm already late on, as well as reviewing 2 outlines for new episodes of Ultimate Spider-Man, the cartoon we're working on for DXD, and you know, it just goes on and on. So it's every day is radically different, and you know, the one consistency is that there's 3 things that are basically constants. Either I'm reading something, drawing something, or interviewing about something. That pretty much happens at least once a day.
Okay. And let's before we get to animation and live TV, let's talk about the movie process, because we've got Thor and Captain America coming up. And it's interesting. I agree. Obviously, Avi really kind of changed the atmosphere and really helped organize, I think, Marvel in terms of a movie entity. And it's that important bridge to now Marvel Studios and Kevin and, you know, being in charge. But it was interesting to watch Daredevil this month on HBO. And I should say, in particular, I really like the director's cut, but sometimes I think Daredevil is one of those kind of middle-of-the-road Marvel movies in terms of how it was received, and I think it was a little bit better than some people remember. And I was pleased to say, oh, you know, this thing still holds up really well. But I wonder, with Thor and now Captain America, and certainly we've seen it in the last few more movies, there's more there for the Marvel readers to really latch onto, and that certainly has changed. But how else would you identify how the movie process has changed?
Well, you know, look, let's face it. We are also learning from experience, right?
Certainly.
You know, while the successes are fantastic and we love them and we love having them, the truth of the matter is that from the movies that may not have been as big a success, let's say something like Iron Man, you tend to learn more, and you tend to learn, you know, what is that we definitely don't want to do, and what is it that the audience is definitely not reacting to. You know, you'll find those moments as well even in our great movies, because there'll always be a moment where you go, you know, that could have been better, or it wasn't received in the same way that we thought it would be received. But it's always a learning process, and I think we're at a point now as we do these movies where we sit back and we're like, okay, you know, this particular scene in the screenplay, it's not working, and we have experience. While we may feel it's okay, we've had experience in the past in some past movies where, you know what, that didn't work in the past, and there's nothing really telling me that it's going to work now. So let's move on and try to fix these things. And you know, we're really starting to understand what you know, what a Marvel movie really is, or more importantly, what a Marvel fan and what a neophyte is expecting and wants when they walk into a movie theater and they see that big red block start to flip those comic book letters and images. It's just a matter of experience and the time that we spent in the trenches.
And, you're working with real auteurs as well. I mean, we're looking at Thor with Kenneth Branagh and stuff. And I was really excited when he was named because immediately I remembered his work on Henry V. Great Shakespeare movie that has a lot of kind of battles. And even though it's Shakespearean time versus Norse mythology, I kind of saw a kinship there. And I thought, this is the perfect guy for that. And you've got to obviously let the filmmaker make his movie while maintaining the consistency, as I've heard you say, both on air and in written interviews, of what made these things Marvel successes. So tell me about that kind of balancing act when you work with directors and studios, for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a certain kind of director that works well at Marvel, and it tends to be those that are very, very, very collaborative. And Kenneth falls into that category probably more than anyone that I've met currently. And this is no slight to all the wonderful directors that have worked on Marvel movies, but Kenneth really came in and wanted to immerse himself in the world of Marvel. So much so that unbeknownst to me, I guess he was in New York. This is a little over a year ago. He was visiting New York, and his assistant just called up and said, Kenneth is in New York. He'd like to pop by the publishing division. And, usually when somebody does that, we get a heads up. Marvel Studios may call us up and say, hey, listen, Kenneth is in town. He wants to tour, put out all the bells and whistles. But no, Kevin just took it upon himself. I don't even think the guys at Marvel West knew that he was in town and wanted to tour. It was just an impulse by him, which I think was just fantastic. So he came up here and he just wanted to see how the comics were made and wanted to meet the people here and see sort of the creative brain trust that creates the comics that then he eventually reads and uses as source material. And I found that and he's just such a lovely guy, and he sat for photos with everyone and just took his time. He was never rushed, greeted everyone, shook everybody's hand, and he was just so inclusive of and people walked away going, this is going to be a great movie. I love this guy. And he's been like that from the very, very start. But one of the things that we do at Marvel to maintain that Marvel consistency is that we have a small group of us, which is, we've called the Marvel Creative Committee. Mm-hmm. And the Creative Committee, we basically sit there and as the screenplays come through, as ideas for the movies come through, just even the initial concepts, we sit there and we bat these things around to make sure that they are intrinsically Marvel and fit into the vision of these characters and the Marvel Universe from the point of view of every division at Marvel, not just one particular division. Is it working for the cinema? Is it working for the comics? Will it work for digital? Will all these things work? And is the concept strong enough? Is it Marvel enough? So it's immensely collaborative, and that's why you need guys like Kenneth and Joe Johnston, to come in and Joss and be part of the process. But they know this going in. This isn't a surprise to anyone. It's the way that we work, and it's the same way that we work with the comic books. We are very, very collaborative as we plan out, what the next year, 2 to 3 years of publishing is going to be, and then our writers go off and they go do those things after the big collaborative sessions.
It's been a nice surprise to see already in things like the Avengers cartoon, I think the similarities to specifically Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man. And it's great. And I also think that there have been good creative decisions in terms of, again, you're dealing with a Y7 product, I guess, with the Avengers cartoon, and how to soften things but still kind of keep Marvel continuity in there in some ways. I like the choice of Hydra kind of elevating its relationship with Captain America going back to the 40s, and I'm hearing rumors that maybe in the Joe Johnston interview that Hydra has a larger part in the film than, say, just specifically, Nazis and I would you care to comment on that in terms of what you know?
Well, the only thing, while I'm not in the business of giving out spoilers, the one thing that I think is very evident to people who are hardcore Marvel fans is how the comics are definitely being used as source material for these movies, and then consequentially the movies are feeding back into the comic books. The animation is feeding from the comic books, and the animation will eventually is also getting fed by the movie division, and we're adapting all these things. I mean, let's face it, Robert Downey Jr. gave such a quintessential performance for Tony Stark that I think he changed he captured the essence of Tony Stark that was in the comics, but then added this Robert Downey Jr. aspect to the character that that is his right to do as the actor who's portraying the character. And it was so strong and so successful that I think you see that now permeating into obviously the animation with the voice choices. You see it permeating into the way that he's written in the comic books. There's a certain pattern to the character that now has been affected by Downey. So one thing affects the other, and I think as long as those things are positive aspects, as long as we're not saying, hey, you know what, we're changing this character's costume in the comics because it's in the movie, as opposed to saying, well, we're changing it because, you know what, it was so amazingly cool in the movie that we need to do something like that in the comics, then I think we're okay. And that's really the as much, I hate using the word synergy, but unfortunately I haven't found a word yet that really describes it just right. But
I understand.
But it's the kind of thing that's happening now at Marvel. You're seeing one thing inspiring the other, inspiring the next. And you're seeing our creators, even comic creators now, that are getting involved in all aspects of Marvel. And you need to look no further than the upcoming Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, which we're developing right now for DXD.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree, and believe me, as someone that comes from media as well, we all hate synergy because a lot of times it's forced. But I think in the case of you guys, Marvel is its own brand, and it's important that there is that consistency between all the different media platforms that it's on. So, yeah, I hate the word synergy too, but it does make sense.
Yeah, and in so many cases with us now, it's happening organically. I know for a fact that when Thor is released next week, and people go to the movies, and in particular, our artists go to the movies, and they see the visions of Asgard, and they see how the Asgardians are portrayed. It's not going to be like a mandate that comes down from publishing saying, we really should draw something that's closer to the movie. It's just going to happen because it's so darn cool. As an artist, I look at this and go, oh man, how would I take that idea and adapt it into the comics? And I'm not saying taking a literal interpretation of what Asgard looks like into our books, but just the spirit of it is going to change. It's unavoidable. And the same thing will happen in Captain America. We're gonna and look, Captain America took its inspiration not only from the classic Kirby Simon stuff, but also took inspiration from Millar and Hitch and Bendis and all those guys. So it's one thing that's feeding the next, and it's not happening because it's a mandate that's being forced. It's just a matter of people picking at things that they consider the best of the best.
Given what's happening in the Ultimate Spider-Man comic, I'm interested to hear. Well, and maybe you won't be able to comment on this until the program comes out. But given that we're in the midst of the death of Spider-Man and the cover images that we've seen and the hints that have already been dropped in the media that there will be a new Spider-Man in Ultimate Spider-Man, it makes you wonder what the cartoon will look like, and how, and kind of almost in that same way that when Bucky took over for Captain America, some jaded people were like, I'm sure he'll be back to Steve Rogers by the time of the movie. Let me just say, as one person that was happy to stay along for the ride and say, let this play out as long as it can, and certainly we are back with Steve in the costume, but it's not necessarily the way that people thought it might end up. So I don't know if what's happening in the comic book is going to impact the cartoon or not, or if you're able to comment on it. I'll just let you throw it out there.
No. What's happening in the comics now will not impact the cartoon as we're developing it right now.
Okay.
But what is interesting, and what I'm going to be interested to see if it happens, is that there are several storytelling devices that we will be using in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. I don't want to give any of it away, but it's stuff that we've put in that we think is unique, hasn't been done with Spider-Man, or actually may not have been done in a cartoon that I'm aware of, but also is still keeping within the spirit of Spider-Man, something that's very Spider-Man-esque. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to be curious to see if, when that cartoon hits, and is the huge hit that it's destined to be. I'm not too confident, am I? Whether
you get good people on it, it's all right.
Right. Whether some aspect of that is actually going to seep into the comic books a little bit. I can see it happening. I can see it not happening, but it'll be fun to see.
Interesting. Well, I think in general, animation has really grown up I think, in the last 10 years. And really, I would say that about your competitors across the street as well, where you're making it for a PG-13 audience, but you're not playing down to them in any way. And I'll even include, obviously, the next Avengers with that as well, the kid group from the future. You know, I mean, it's I really think that, you know, you're doing enough to satisfy, I think, the Marvel audience, the reading audience, but also presenting a product that is accessible to the new ones. And that's why I was wondering, too, with the cartoon, again, with the changes, you know, you'd hate to have it be a success and somebody reach for an Ultimate Spider-Man comic and find, you know, Jimmy Johnson as Spider-Man as opposed to Peter or whatever. So, like I said, I'll let you play it out and see how things go on the publishing side. And I'm happy to be on the ride.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that we're not fearful of. If you know, there used to be a trope in the comic industry, which was, you know, if you got a movie coming out, make sure your character in the books is as pristine as he's going to be, he or she's going to appear in the movies. And then, you know, we did something called Civil War right around the time when there was going to be an Iron Man movie. I'm sorry, where you know, those who use conventional wisdom sort of looked at us and said, wait a minute, is it possible that Tony Stark is being perceived as the villain of this particular story, and you guys are doing this right now, right at the height of an Iron Man movie? And we're like, yeah. But when you look at it, Tony Stark has never been more popular than he started to become during Civil War, and I think it was precisely because we presented this different point of view for the character that while maybe fandom didn't agree with at first, was still a pretty honorable and logical point of view. And again, as Captain America movie hype started to really break, is when Captain America died. I mean, most people, you know, most companies would never have attempted that, or Marvel certainly would have attempted that many years ago. But we've realized that the audience is smart. The audience gets it. And any kind of hype around your character that's bringing your character to the forefront, especially around the time of the movie, is fine. It's good, you know, and it's not gonna hurt the final product at the end of the day, as long as you're telling good stories. And that really, to me, was the hallmark of Ed's Winter Soldier story arc, with Winter Soldier becoming, you know, Captain America, is the fact that at the end of the day, those stories were so good that as we started polling people, I remember polling people at a couple of Joe panels at a convention saying, hey, who wants to see Steve Rogers back? And we'd get 50% of the room, and the other 50% of the room wanted Winter Soldier back. That's just a testament to how good Ed is and how great a story he told, that he actually made people think, the hell with Steve Rogers. You know, I like Bucky. And that's a win-win in my book. Well,
plus breaking one of those ultimate Marvel taboos for decades of, you know, the only people that stay dead are Gwen Stacy, Uncle Ben, and Bucky. Right. And now take Bucky off the list. So that's, you know, that's great. No, I've enjoyed Ed's ride. And also,
and to be honest with you, I never understood the Bucky one, but you know.
And I love the reinvention of Bucky, and in fact, it makes me want to see more of it. I'm glad to see that you're doing things with the World War II era of Cap in general in Marvel, because I really feel that now that you've got a much more harder edge Bucky, it's a much more interesting thing other than just golly gee whiz Cap, what do we do next? You know, you got a little fighter out there that's ready to slit a few throats and shoot a few bad guys while he's out there. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing, too, now with Iron Man, I would say that to your guys' credit, you guys learned that, you know, the lesson of the X-Men movie, and when the TV Guide tie-in came out, you know, Matt hit the ground running with a story that really did seem like the next step after the Iron Man movie. So, you know, obviously by design, and I think that's, you know, it's great. I think you guys get how to kind of do the next chapter in the books. So like I said, another thing I'm just interested in, and this was something that came out a lot in 2010, the amount of miniseries that came out of Thor and Cap. And we understand there's a new Cap and Thor movie coming out, but both films. And why make so much new product versus leaning on some of the classic stuff that might still be able to stand on its own? I'm sure that discussion probably made it around the hallways.
Yeah, you know, I mean, look, these are decisions that are made by our sales department. You know, ultimately, they let us know exactly how much product they need, and how much product they believe that retailers need in order to basically sell some books. And sometimes we do rely on the older published stuff because there's a lot of it out there, and sometimes we need new stuff. So this is an alchemy that I don't partake in. Especially now I don't partake in. But basically, the sales guys they know their stuff. So I don't pretend to understand exactly how they do their magic, but they generally tend to be really right with respect to what the audience wants.
Okay. Well, I wonder, obviously, with it being in the last few months a softer comic magazine market versus what it was, say, during the time of Civil War. And this is something that's been discussed, I think, a lot ad nauseum, I think, on some of the comic news websites. But when even the New York Times makes mention of it a few months ago, it's a fair question to discuss. As Chief Creative Officer, are you in the meetings in terms of discussing where the monthly magazine might be going? Because we always, and believe me, I know, I've lived through the various price changes and remember in the 70s when, comics were heading towards 75 cents in a dollar, all the gasps in the room and everything. But now, when you are talking about, close to $5 for a 32-page comic, 22 pages of story and stuff, you got to wonder if there is a real ceiling here in terms of how much product, a consumer can buy versus, the old days. And I don't know.
Yeah, listen, it's always a concern. I think the one thing that's been proven out most recently is that while comics certainly have a hefty price tag on them, lowering the price doesn't necessarily mean an increase in sales or an increase in revenue for retailers. I think some people are learning that the hard way. But with respect to the future of comics and what that price point will be, if that future happens to be digital, right. There's lots of conversations going on about that stuff, and it's going on all the time because that technology is moving very, very quickly. But ultimately, it's the audience that makes that decision as to what that's going to be. And if we do our jobs right, then we keep our ears to the ground, then we should hopefully be ahead of that curve.
But as you attract a new audience, and especially in the digital realm, and I understand everyone's looking for whatever that magic number is that will be palatable. Right. That's, again, are there discussions in terms of that, the 22-page per chapter might have to change in some respect?
Nothing in that sense.
Okay.
No, not with respect to length, but again, I think everything is on the table.
Sure.
I do think everything's on the table. I mean, we've discussed even the structure of stories, right? I mean, there was a time, right, back in newsstand era before there were really before the trade paperback was really anything that even was remotely in anybody's mind, where the structure of storytelling was soap opera, and every story ended in a cliffhanger. And the philosophy behind that, which was a viable one, was that you don't want to give the reader the opportunity to drop a book.
Sure.
So if you end the story completely and wrap a bow around it, there is that fear that, they may just try something else out because this story is done.
Right.
So the philosophy at the time was, you tell a story, and even if you end the big A story, you start a cliffhanger based on the B story that you've been developing throughout the past month or two. That changed once the trade paperback became a viable financial model to writing stories in story arcs, because at the end of the day, as we here at Marvel in particular, as we started looking at our back library of older material and saying, can we compile these stories? We realized that we can compile a story, and by the time we were done with that compilation, the story ended in a cliffhanger. So you were asking a reader to pay a significant amount of money for a collection that ended in an unsatisfactory manner. So we started looking at the way we were building stories, and of course we started building them in story arcs, much like movies or mini TV events, so that they had a satisfactory ending, and then you could compile these in 4 or 5, 6 issue clumps, and the reader would get a complete story from beginning to end for the price point they were paying, and at least feel satisfied in that. Now, as we move into more of a digital arena, what's the new philosophy? I would argue that there may be a philosophy in which we may need to look at shifting back towards that newsstand model, right, where we want people to continuously come back to the product month in, month out, week in, week out, and they have it's an easy access to the product, very much like the newsstand used to be. So do you change your philosophy? I'm not saying we're going to do it. I'm just saying that it's definitely something to think about.
Sure.
How will we create our stories? How will we be writing our stories? Will a collection matter at that point when really carrying the material around is really not a problem? You can carry 1,000 issues of Spider-Man in an iPad, so and get as much Spider-Man as you want. Those discussions have also happened with respect to how do we create our stories, where will we be going. But it's also too soon to tell. It's way too soon to tell.
Understood.
What the audience may want, because I firmly believe that we're possibly 2 to 3 generations away from an audience that will really have a definite idea of how they want to read their newspapers, read their magazines, and listen to their music.
That's interesting because obviously, and you being a music guy, I understand how quickly the music world changed with, the Napster world and MP3s and where we are today, where brick and mortar music stores are, you buy your music at Starbucks as well as your coffee. And by the way, congratulations on that partnership with Starbucks and digital. That's going to be very interesting. When are we going to hear details on that?
Yeah.
When will we hear details on that specifically?
What was that?
Do you know when we'll hear details
when
specifically?
Will we hear details? I honestly don't know.
Okay.
That's again, that is a marketing decision. So it's we discussed. I actually may have some involvement in that a little bit further on down, but too soon to announce.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not sure when the details will come across. But yeah, I mean, look, and let's face it, the music industry, I think, also got caught with its proverbial pants down, and is suffering for not being basically ready for the digital revolution and piracy and things like that, which is a consistent problem, even for us, but not quite the problem that it is for the music industry.
Well, and that's why I'm surprised you said that it might take 2 or 3 generations, because on one hand I agree with you, because and I kind of feel the artist side maybe is speaking to this, that comic art, it's a lot different to have art in your hands or put it on your wall, and as it is to have it as a screensaver, say on your computer screen. And I wonder if reading books and reading comics in particular, even as opposed to regular just text or prose, I wonder if that art makes the difference. But really, I'm shocked to hear you say that it would take 2 to 3 generations. When you're saying 2 to 3 generations, are you talking 20 or 30 years? Is that what you're saying when you say generations?
I'm talking. No, I mean I'm looking at this as like 5-year increments here.
Okay, all right, 15 years.
I don't necessarily. Yeah, I'm not looking. I'm not talking about decades, but
all right.
But yeah, I mean, and by that, realize that what I'm saying is that amount of time for us to really sort of understand what the readership is going to want.
Okay.
I look at my daughter right now. My daughter is 10 years old, and she's still reading hard copy books as well as reading stuff digitally. So she's bouncing back and forth. Now, 10 years from now, that may still be the case. That people may be bouncing back and forth between a hard copy and the digital product, or they may not.
Right.
So it's going to take a little bit of time because, again, when my daughter started school, they weaned her on books and newspapers and magazines. I go no further than I used to be on the consulting committee for an art school. I'm not going to go into details, but so once a year I was invited to the art school to take a look at their program and what they were doing and how they were going about it. And I remember going through this art school and noticing that they had a paste up and mechanicals class. And I remember talking, as part of the board, I said, guys, this is a complete and utter waste of your students' time. But they insisted, no, you got to do paste up and mechanics. I'm like, look, this is not. Even at Marvel, we're already cycling out of this. We have like maybe 2 or 3 people here who are still doing some paste up work. The rest of it's being done digitally. And now, in a matter of 10 years, it's they finally got rid of the paste up and mechanical course, but nobody does that stuff anymore. It's a skill set that's completely lost. And quite frankly, sure, could you be sad that kids don't know how to use a ruling pen? Yeah, be sad all you want. Nobody needs it.
Right.
There's no use for it anymore. It's gone. It's extinct. It's like desiring a Gutenberg press. It's just not going to happen. So I don't know where we're going to be in 10 years, but the audience will tell us. They will absolutely decide what it is that they want and how they want it, and it might be a hybrid model, and it might not, and But I certainly don't think there's going to be a model in the future that's going to be solely back to hard copy. That's all people are going to want. They're not going to want this digital stuff anymore. That's just not going to happen.
Okay, and back on the story side, and dovetailing from something that you mentioned earlier. As far as playing to not necessarily, well, I guess maybe it is writing for the trade, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but I wonder with the big events, these interesting status quo changes happen in the Marvel universe, and I sometimes wonder if a lot of 6-part stories don't give us a chance to really have fun in that new status quo. Before it, and I mean that in a specific book by book sense. Sometimes if like you're reading Spider-Man. Well, actually, I shouldn't use Spider-Man as an example because I know for a fact that Dan Slott currently likes to write 2-part stories, 3-part stories. But most people write for 5 or 6-part stories, and I wonder if 2 stories a year is enough to really appreciate Power Man in the new status quo, and then all of a sudden now here we are in the midst of Fear itself. When I really thought like for instance Norman in charge in Secret after Secret Invasion leading to Siege, I thought that was kind of an interesting time that even though it was again it was over a calendar year that it was going on, people didn't have that much of a chance to tell more than 1 or 2 stories dealing in that new status quo. And I wonder what if you guys wonder about that as you tweak how to react past an event. If that is constantly changing.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always think about that stuff when we try to serve story first, but ultimately, sometimes it's only 12 months of the year, and sometimes things fall behind, sometimes things fall ahead, sometimes you have to push a calendar one way or another. So there is there's no perfect formula for it. I think we do a good job of it more often than not, but ultimately we have to pay the bills here, and we have to rely on the bigger stories. And look, I for one advocated here at Marvel, a few years ago that we needed to take a break from big events. We needed to get off the merry-go-round.
Right.
I mean, fiscally, we understood that we needed to do it. I mean, it's what sells. And yes, there were those fans, online who were saying, you got to stop with the crossovers. It's too much. It's too much. It's too much. But that wasn't the reason why we did it. The reason we did it was because I felt it was the law of diminishing returns. We were writing one story on the back of another story, and we needed to take a break and let our writers and artists start working on something that didn't necessarily tie into everything else, and sort of recharge the creative batteries. And consequently, we did do that with the understanding that we were going to feel, a bit of a nip in a tuck here and there, and that's exactly what happened. So and just going back to fandom, suddenly where were all these fans that didn't want that didn't want crossovers? They weren't buying the books in the same manner that they were buying the crossovers. So, now we are back in the saddle, so to speak, and putting out, bigger stories because, as I said, the fans tell you what they want. They are ultimately the final arbiter of this stuff. And as much as the internet may say otherwise, what fans want are bigger stories. They want big events. They want the tie-in stuff. So if that's what they want, that's what we're going to produce, and we're going to do it. And again, now that our batteries are recharged, we can really do some kick-ass stuff. And I think Fear itself is a very, very big example of what we're coming at people with. We're coming at people with now.
Understood, and let me say too, love what Stuart is doing, love what Matt is doing, and enjoying the tie-ins as I've read them so far. It's Wednesday; I haven't picked up my books yet.
Right.
But now that's another question in terms of where there was a big cry, and I'm sure you're well aware of it, of titles like Thor: The Mighty Avenger coming out, great critical favorite. Everyone enjoyed the art, everyone enjoyed the story and stuff. It getting cut short, and understandably sales weren't there. I can appreciate a bottom line concern with new titles, but I also know that sometimes there's a problem with getting the word out on a title and it reaching, I think, an audience saturation of being available to the market, where everything kind of hinges, it seems like, on that first issue. And if the orders aren't there for that first issue, a lot of really good ideas get cut short because, again, the initial interest isn't there. Is there a way to better communicate that? Because I really feel that a lot of good ideas, Dr. Voodoo, Thor, the Mighty Avenger, maybe doesn't get a chance to reach an audience and gestate. I mean, I remember when you first took over as editor-in-chief, you had books that were your own critical favorites. I think to Christopher Priest's Black Panther, for example, that you guys really kind of, are like, hey, try this book. And I remember you being out there and in Wizard and on the news, on the website saying, buy this book and everything. And you guys gave it a serious chance. I'm not saying go even 18 months, but isn't it, is it possible that we could go a year and then maybe assess or at least into a second arc before you pull out the rug? Or is cost concerns really that serious where no, if it's either now or never?
Well, I mean, if we look at our window, and I'm sorry to be a little serious here, but
please,
it's not a great economy out there right now, right?
Absolutely.
Times are tough, right? When things are better, it's much easier to take a flyer on stuff. It's much easier to take a flyer on stuff like Black Panther because even though Black Panther's sales weren't through the roof, they were consistent. They were consistent, and it was telling some pretty interesting stories. Again, the sales and marketing guys here, I'm always astounded because they do have this matrix full of numbers where they could almost predict on a very, very accurate basis exactly where books are going to fall and where the actual sales curve is going to dip. So when they make these decisions, they aren't arbitrary, and as much as that Thor book was wonderful and well received, ultimately they took a good hard look at it and realized that it wasn't going to be doing what they thought it would be doing, and in particular in a year where Thor is being marketed, everywhere. So there is that, and so as tough as it was to cancel that book or any book, certain things have to be done. And yes, it gets much tighter during a bad economy. There's just no two ways about it. And even though Marvel does relatively well, we do have to mind our P's and Q's and make sure that we are still profitable at the end of the day. But then with respect to marketing dollars, and this is something that I've spoken about from day one as being editor-in-chief. I mean, it's one thing for me to go out there publicly and get on a website and say, hey, you got to be reading this. That doesn't cost Marvel anything, And when I was editor-in-chief and I had the time to do that, I would go out there and bang a drum about as many things as I possibly could.
Yep.
But with respect to what Marvel puts its marketing dollars behind, they have to be really judicious, right? And people will say, well, why do you always promote a book like Avengers and you don't promote a smaller title? Okay, well, look, if you look at it from dollars and cents, if it was your money that you were spending out of your pocket, right, and someone said to you, listen, you have this Wolverine book over here, and then you have this smaller title over here that nobody's really reading. Now, you could spend 1,000 of your own dollars to promote this smaller title, and you're going to increase sales on this smaller title by 20%, okay? Let's say you're selling 10 of those titles, 10 of those issues, right? Mm-hmm. So you're going to increase sales on that book by two copies. So you're now selling 12. Or you could take that $1,000 you have, and you could put it on Wolverine, which is already a pretty popular character, right? And let's say you're selling 100 Wolverine books, right? And you're going to increase sales by 20%. Well, where is your money best spent at the end of the day? Right, and that's really how marketing ends up looking at things across the board with any business. Now, mind you, let's say there are also different parameters here. Let's say that smaller title, that small book, is something that you think, there's a really good idea in there, and we may want to eventually build that property for something in animation or in movies or whatever it may be. Or, on the flip side, that title may not be selling really well in the direct market, but guess what? It's doing really, really well in the bookstores.
Sure.
Right? Our entire Max line is like that in many ways, right?
I believe that. Absolutely.
So now you're saying, okay, well, now if we invest $1,000 here, we're not. It's not about the 2 extra copies we're going to sell. It's about the other stuff that's behind this particular product, the other what this product means to us on a corporate level. So when it comes to marketing dollars, and again, if you look at them as your own money, you'd have to say to yourself, well, hell, I as much as I love that one particular title, I really got to market Wolverine because that's what's really keeping the lights on in this place.
Understood. No, I understand that. Now, instead, then, maybe on some of these other things, is it possible that we move back to the miniseries or the limited series as opposed to starting something with the intent of it being ongoing? Because I think you might get as much of a disappointment of people not being willing to try something if, they, like I said, that first issue comes out, and I'm sorry, the orders aren't there, therefore it's canceled. And it's like, it's canceled. It just came out. What the hell? What happened?
Listen, that all makes great sense. The thing that I've found in my 10 years of working as Marvel editor in chief is that the market is in constant flux.
Okay.
So today, right, 4-issue miniseries may be the kind of thing that's selling. And a month from now, that's being facetious. Let's say 6 months from now, suddenly fans don't want 4-issue miniseries. They want ongoing series. They want to know that there's a longer story here. And 4 issues, the miniseries aren't doing anything. Or fans don't even want ongoing series with minor characters. They only want ongoing series of the bigger characters right now, and they don't want miniseries. These things change all the time, and I've been at meetings where I've seen it happen, where all of a sudden we've planned up the wazoo on a particular style of product involving a particular number of our characters, and realizing, you know what, we're going to have to tear up track here because that particular desire from fandom to want that particular product is now dying out. They're looking for this other thing, and we're seeing success in these other areas. Okay, let's shift, let's move. So I understand it from the outside looking in. I see fans thinking to themselves, well, I don't understand why they don't do this, and I don't understand why they don't do that. Not understanding that things here are, nothing is done by the seat of our pants.
Understood.
We're not allowed to do things by the seat of our pants, with the exception of just being as creative as humanly possible. There's a lot of smart people here who sit around and go, okay, and it's their job to see the trends, to see what's happening out there, to talk to retailers, to talk to our distributors, and figure out exactly what it is that our fans need or are desiring. So that when you see that we're that why are we launching an ongoing? Well, it's because that's what the plan called for, and that's what we thought was going to work. Why aren't we doing miniseries? Well, maybe miniseries are just not what fans are wanting right now, because maybe we're looking at. And I'm not speaking I'm not speaking factually right now, okay, because I'm not in the marketing meeting. But maybe these guys are looking at the sales on miniseries and realizing, you know what, people are not picking up these miniseries. They're picking up the mainline books. That's what they want right now. So let's do more of that. It's changed considerably and constantly ever since I've been here. I see it happen all the time, and I've learned that whenever I ask these questions, there's always a good answer as to why we're not doing certain things and why we are doing certain things.
Totally understand, and believe me, I'm not trying to armchair quarterback you either. But and also, as you say, not only does it change, but it becomes cyclical as well. Because being a reader of multi-decades, I remember when the miniseries were in vogue, and I remember when they went away, and when they came back in the late '90s, and we're in that lull again. So who's to say? But I guess
and the problem, the way you get into trouble in this business is if you become dogmatic about something and you say, this is the way it's done,
Certainly.
This is the way it's been done since Stan Lee was here, and this is the way we're going to do it. And that's how Marvel has gotten in trouble in the past. It's how other companies got in trouble in the past is by relying on on nostalgia. Is
there room for new characters to break through? Because that, and again, I think, and I've seen you guys experiment with, characters like Aranya, Spider-Girl, and I remember when she first came out, and you brought back Amazing Fantasy to kind of promote her. And then it seems like maybe the successful way of breaking in a new character is doing it kind of in the old situation comedy way of, if you want a spin-off, make the character a prominent character in one book that is popular, and then finally spin them off into their own book. But I wonder, since Runaways, and correct me if I'm missing somebody, I'm trying to think of a brand new idea in the last 5 years that has really kind of taken hold, and it's like, no. Well, I do know one. S.H.I.E.L.D., obviously, John Hickman, and look at all the great. But again, there's at least a tether to establish Marvel continuity to a degree,
right. Well, but I think that tether is what's important. I do think that tether is what's important. When you look at characters, first of all, when you look at any of the iconic characters at Marvel, with the exception of the stuff that was part of the original universe, the stuff that Stan and Jack and those guys sort of popped out with originally. For these characters to become iconic, there's a huge incubation period. It takes a long time, and as much as we consider Iron Man iconic, right? Spider-Man to general audiences outside of the world of Marvel was an iconic character. Captain America to a certain extent. Hulk certainly to a major extent because of the Bill Bixby TV show. But outside of that, nobody in the general public knows who the hell Thor is. They don't
Understood.
know they didn't know who Iron Man was, right? They don't know
you.
they don't know Shield. They don't know Shield from from anybody. And
Right.
So when we call them brand new characters to stick, we're really talking about publishing at the end of the day.
True.
But for any of these characters to become iconic, it takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight. And it takes a certain. I mean, actually, you know what? Here's another one for you. Jessica Jones. I think Jessica Jones is a character who has grown through Marvel and will be growing in the future as well.
Well, that's going to be interesting to see when the live action show happens, and
I think there's always stuff like that, and it's just a matter of timing. And look, sometimes you create a character and the timing isn't right, and all of a sudden it explodes. I mean, Deadpool just had a renaissance, right? I mean, Deadpool, when Joe Kelly was writing Deadpool, that was one of the best books Marvel was putting out in a very, very long time, and yet it wasn't a huge seller, right? It was having trouble getting traction. Runaways. I mean, we consider Runaways one of our better properties, and yet that's a property that sometimes, depending on the team and depending on the time that it comes out, has trouble getting traction. But you know what? There could be a time, next year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where Runaways is the biggest property that Marvel has. You just don't know. You just don't know what you have, and it's a matter of timing, right? Creative team, and approach to the story that does those things. So. I mean, are there characters becoming as iconic as quickly as Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and Thor and Iron Man within the world of comic books? No, I don't think you've seen that from anybody. I don't think we've seen that in decades.
Fair enough.
But there's still stuff here that will hopefully bubble to the surface as we move along.
Well, and all right, now and by the way, we're at 45 minutes. Do you want to? I don't want to keep you too long if you've got other things.
I may eventually have to go to the bathroom.
All right, well then, something, I'll ask one more question and we'll wrap up. Talking about exposing these characters to a bigger audience, and certainly through television and films and stuff. I remember in the 90s there was a real concern about showing spandex on live action properties.
Right.
And obviously that's something you guys still wrestle with. So when you mention somebody like Jessica Jones or even Runaways, I think it's going to be easier for a regular audience to kind of gravitate to those characters, as opposed to finding that right look. Across the street, you see the problems they're having with Wonder Woman's costume. I think even though you've got somebody as good as David Kelly, who I think is a more than proven commodity in television, and I'm willing to wait until I see it. But yeah, what do it's I've liked the choices that have been made both in the films. I guess exclusively when it comes to Marvel, we're only talking about the films. I thought Daredevil's costume, I think, was pretty, okay for what it was. Cap looks great. I think Thor, you accept it because I don't think anyone has a preconceived notion of a god. But when you come to some of these other characters, that's going to be the question of how you guys design a look that works for live action versus comics.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, in fairness to the guys across town, I mean, we don't know if Wonder Woman's costume is going to work or not yet, and we don't know. We don't know how much they're actually going to use it. I mean, people are focusing on those pictures that are on the internet and saying, "Oh my God," or loving it or whatever. But look, ultimately, you can't go by what the internet is saying, and you can't go by what those pictures are providing. They may find a way to light it, to direct it, to film it. That's going to make it work on television.
I'm with you.
I don't think there's any absolutes here. And look, David Kelly is wonderful, so I'm sure he's going to find a way to make it work. I think ultimately it's going to rely on story. Is this going to be a good story that people are going to want to see weekly on television? But yes, with Marvel characters, it might be a little bit easier, depending on the property. I'm not saying there's a Punisher TV show, but could you see Punisher on TV?
Sure,
absolutely. You don't even need the skull to do it. It's just the concept of the Punisher. And you're right. With Runaways, it would be the same thing. They don't need costumes. And Jessica Jones, no, you don't need costumes. But and that is the trick with television. It's almost harder on television than it is. Actually, I believe it is harder on television to do the costume stuff and make it as convincing as you can make it in the movies. I mean, television is very, very tough. It's almost much more grounded in reality for whatever reason. There's something about it that when I think about costumes, I'm like, man, how do you make that work? How would you make that work on a week in, week out basis?
Well, as we wrap up, I want to congratulate you. I saw the teaser covers for the last chapter of the Death of Spider-Man and Ultimate Spider-Man. It looks fantastic. I'm glad that hopefully that the changes in your position are affording you a little more time to do art. Is that
No.
No, it's not. All right. Well,
no. Not at all. I mean, I don't know when I'll ever be able to do sequentials again, but covers I'll still be able to do from time to time. But, as I look at my list of 4 covers that I owe at this point, it's not looking good.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time and talking, and good luck with.
Oh, my pleasure, man.
And good luck with the films that are coming up, and also all the animation and live action stuff. Honestly, I've had constant conversations with Bendis and Loeb. Very excited about the different directions that Marvel is going in, and really congratulations on a great 10 plus years. Doing what you've been doing. I mean, it's the proof is there in the product, and you've been selecting the right people, and obviously you're part of the decision making as well. So nicely done.
Thanks, sir. And so is it going to be another 5 years before we talk again?
I certainly hope not.
Cool, man. Well, thanks for everything, John.
Next up, a short conversation I had with Joe. Well, 20 minutes. Not too bad. But we were in the one of the secluded hallways of the San Diego Convention Center during Comic-Con. This was right before the release of Guardians of the Galaxy, just a few days before, and Joe had some interesting observations. And, I should always listen to these guys, because just like back when Winter Soldier was coming out, Bendis was like, you're going to love this. This is your kind of movie. And when they announced Guardians, we're like, really? Guardians? Is that a good idea? Hell, these aren't even B-list characters. These are C and D-list characters. Who cared about Groot? Who cared about Rocket Raccoon? Who cared about Star-Lord or Gamora, or Drax? Unbelievable, man. But we grew to know them and love them because of the amazing success of the movie. So it's kind of interesting to see what the pre-release buzz was, and Joe's feelings about it, and a few other subjects as well. Joe Quesada in the hidden corners of San Diego Comic-Con on this portion of Word Balloon.
We start with Marvel's Chief Creative Officer, Joe Quesada, just days away from the Guardians of the Galaxy film opening. The early tracking is all positive. Rotten Tomatoes, I'm hearing, as I was flying back, 100% from audience, 99% from creators. They had the premiere in Los Angeles last week. This Tuesday, the New York premiere happens, and I heard from a few creators how excited they were to see it. But with Joe, we talk movies, television, and, of course, the comics, because there are big story changes happening at Marvel in all 3 mediums. We talk about the Netflix television series. We talk about, of course, the movie slate and the Marvel movie panel, Joe's role in that, and some of the big changes that we're hearing about. Sam Wilson becoming Captain America and the female Thor. So it's great to get Joe's impressions and have a nice conversation in one of the dark corners of Comic-Con to start things off on Word Balloon. All right, we're here in one of the tucked away corners of San Diego Comic-Con, and I'm happy to see Joe Quesada face to face. It's always good to talk to you, sir.
It's great to see you, man. How are you?
Doing good. So we're on the eve of Guardians coming out. And I know you kind of addressed it in there in the panel that we just left, the 75th anniversary panel. Guardians is not an obvious choice, and I know that it had a long gestation period, but really, we're talking about a C or D level book. And I know it's kind of an essay question, but really, why now? And can you talk about some of the steps that led you to believe this is going to work?
The conversation internally at Marvel about Guardians has been going on for several years now. I mean, we knew it was a step that we were going to take as a company, because we know, again, like people who've been reading our books have known for a very, very long time that we're not just about superheroes. We have characters that span many different genres, many different universes, the galaxy. We have characters that have magical powers, superpowers, technical powers, whatever that may be. And we knew that Guardians, there was something special there, and it showed a different side of our universe. And we knew that there was going to come a point, as we started to delve into the cinematic universe, where we wanted to show the world that, and in Hollywood at the same time, that we had a very deep bench with respect to the library. And Guardians was a property that was so multifaceted, had such great characters, and such a deep, rich universe that we could play in. We felt it was really a great move for us. So we started really working on Guardians. It was a slow burn at first, and then became seriously started producing, seriously started to work on, as we start to roll, through Avengers and other things.
Brian, choosing Bendis, Brian Bendis is the writer and stuff on the Marvel movie panel as well. This version, was it always his published version? Was it geared towards, all right, if we're doing this, was everything kind of synergy-wise pointing to, let's not only make a great comic, but obviously let's really develop something, and not in that crass way of we're making a comic to make a movie. You know what I'm saying?
No. I mean, but if you look at what we've been doing, when we knew that there was an Avengers movie on the horizon, and it was several years out, we started to put a very, very big focus on our Avengers property. And we started to put our top-line creators on Avengers. So it was no different with Guardians. We knew that the Guardians was on the horizon, and we started to do the exact same thing. And this is because we understand how important our fans who read our books. It all starts with them. They are the people who go out there. They support our product. They support our movies. They're out there virally talking about things that they love and they don't like about what it is that we do. So it's important for them to want and desire the stuff that we have out there. And if they love Guardians, then we know we're on to something. So we wanted to make sure to put our best foot forward with Guardians and have them behind it wholeheartedly, comic-wise, to support the movie and to support the upcoming animation, which we announced over here as well, which is going to be a lot of fun. It's probably going to be, right now, I'm so psyched about that animated show. It's going to be a blast.
That's excellent. And I know, Loeb and the animation guys are kicking ass. When you guys approach a movie panel, this is something else that Brian and I have talked about. When you're approaching these filmmakers individually and stuff, is there a general philosophy for the movie panel to walk in when you work in with a James Gunn or a Kenneth Branagh or some of these others that have made good films and everything? I mean, how do you explain Marvel to these guys and get that Marvel flavor? And I know it's auteur versus committee, and another conversation Brian and I have had.
Well, each one of these meetings is different. Sometimes the director's there, sometimes it's not. I mean, that's really more a question for Kevin Feige because Kevin is really he is the keeper of the flame, and he's the one that really along with the other producers that we have at Marvel who deal directly with the directors on a day-to-day basis.
Okay,
and they understand exactly what Marvel's philosophy is when it comes to making movies, and they understand the one thing that everyone knows going in, and this isn't just to our movies. This is everything from our animated shows to our TV shows to the way that we make our comics. Everything is a collaborative process. It all is. Just in the comics alone, we have a general story meeting, I'd say 4 times a year, where we fly in all our top writers, and we all sit there with editors, writers, and myself and the whole team, and we sit there and we start to sort of really sort of hammer out the next year to 2 years worth of publishing grand ideas. Mm-hmm. So all this stuff is done on a collaborative basis. It's writers with editors, and that's really the stuff that starts to shape not just the publishing universe, but really the entire Marvel universe in a grand way for years to come. I mean, when you look at the Winter Soldier movie, I mean, there was no Winter Soldier in the Marvel universe 10 years ago. It didn't exist, and that's stuff that comes out of those meetings. So I always look at publishing as if Marvel was a wheel with spokes that came out of the hub, the hub is really publishing. That's where it all starts.
That's fantastic, and I know that makes a lot of fans relieved and stuff. I'm looking at my notes here. All right, so tell me about the Netflix platform and why it made sense. And I know these are kind of Feige questions as well, but tell me. We've got 4 shows in development. Daredevil's going to be first. Hopefully everything leading to Defenders and everything. I think the count is right. Daredevil, Power Man, Jessica Jones, and then Defenders.
Yes, Daredevil, Jessica Jones. Not exactly sure.
Iron Fist too. So that's right, 4, and then the 5th is Defenders.
Yeah. It's an incredibly exciting deal for us.
Yeah.
We're going to be dealing with it's really kind of like Marvel Knights.
I'm glad you said that because that's what it sounded like in the panel. Please go on.
It's the darker corners of the Marvel universe. It does take place within the cinematic universe, where a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Peggy Carter deal more with the world of S.H.I.E.L.D. and a little bit more in the world of Avengers and those superheroes. The Netflix universe deals with the darker corners of the universe. So, while Tony Stark, Stark Tower is over there in Midtown Manhattan, there's this little corner Hell's Kitchen where there's this new hero called Daredevil who's beating up on some bad guys.
On a very street level kind of sense.
Very street level, and it's very real world. It's very, very gritty, but it's not bleak. That's the important thing. It's that it's still. The one thing I think that we're known for at Marvel is that even when things are really, really dark, it's never bleak. It's never hopeless. You still want to live in the Marvel universe. There's still an element of fun and humor. Some of it's self-defacing, but at the same time, it will always be fun. So, but this is a darker area. So we'll be exploring those corners. And right now we're just having an absolute blast. The cast is fantastic. Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock is just amazing. So we're having a lot of fun.
And choosing this platform of Netflix and stuff rather than, certainly Disney has plenty of media outlets. Why did Netflix make sense for this? Do you know?
It seemed like a great way to tell our stories. It enables us to do something that we just don't think we can do anywhere else. So. And we also like what Netflix is doing.
Absolutely.
They're doing some great product, and we think it's a platform that will help us shine, help Netflix shine, and I think it's an interesting delivery system too that I think will resonate with fandom.
You've always said that comics are akin to television, episodically and stuff. I do think that the Netflix platform and the ability to binge watch makes it even more so, and certainly gives you a larger tapestry to kind of play out much bigger stories than certainly even 2-hour movies can and everything.
Yeah, and even the writing of the episodes, it makes for an interesting writer's room because you can sit there and plot out a season, and really sort of see it as a very long movie, but it does make the writing in some ways simpler, but yeah, and much more interesting.
That's cool. And tell me, I've talked to you and I've talked to the guys about the retreats, and don't worry, no secret recipe stuff, I promise you. But how has your role changed now as creative officer versus when you were editor-in-chief?
My role is really, again, I'm more global. So I get to sit there and I have a lot of knowledge about everything that's going on everywhere. So I'm able to partake some of that and say, if we're steering too far away from a concept where I know that there might be something going on in studios or in animation where we might be steering too far away and saying, guys, you might not want to do that because you're going to be in such a contradictory place from something else that's going on over here, or there might be something that's so interesting going on in publishing that I might go back to studios or to animation and say, guys, they're doing this in publishing. It's really great. You might want to really check this out, or vice versa, and say, we're doing this in the animated division, and you might want to check this out because it's some really cool designs, and there's just a lot of back and forth. So I act as a conduit in that sense. But also, one of the things that I do in all areas is that I pump out ideas. So so there's a lot of story stuff I get out there. There's a lot of design stuff. People are always asking me, it's a shame you don't draw anymore. I'm like, what? I'm doing a ton of drawing. It's just people don't see it. Because,
I understand.
Because it's just a lot of design stuff and just stuff that's not meant for print. So on occasion I'll do the cover here and there that sees print. But
Understood.
There's a lot of stuff out there that nobody gets to see. Or
that's cool.
Will ever see.
Well, the guys do tell me stuff like that. Obviously, big announcements. The all new Avengers. All these different versions. Female Thor. And Sam Wilson is Captain America now and stuff. Again, right time, interesting that it's happening, a good year before the next Avengers movie or close to it and everything. Just from a macro standpoint, these kinds of moves, why now? And I guess, you address that difficulty maybe of introducing a new diverse character. Certainly Sam Wilson isn't new. But, why Valkyrie wouldn't work and presenting her as opposed to, no, we're going to make Thor a woman now. We're going to have a black Captain America. Talk about that if you would.
These things just come out of those story meetings, and it comes out of either a writer sitting there saying, I got this story that it goes, here's where it goes, or we all sort of, we start developing an idea, and it's like a snowball rolling down a hill, and it just starts gathering steam, and before you know it, we've got this idea where Sam Wilson's Captain America. But it has nothing to do with the fact that we're a year out from the Avengers.
Okay.
Traditionally there was I remember a time in comics where I was working at another publisher, and there was a movie coming out with the hero, and somebody was thinking about doing something radical with the hero, and it was a big cease and desist from the studio. Don't you dare do this, because you can't keep him pristine. Because
right. Absolutely, man. Status quo.
That's not the case with us. I mean, we killed Captain America just before that movie came out, and it's we're just telling our stories. That has nothing really. The only thing that really has that affects our books with respect to the timing of the movie is when we try to put a concerted effort by putting our top tier creative team, like we did with Avengers and like we did with Guardians. That does affect our publishing plan, because we want to put our best foot forward and have those books out there for people. But with respect to the stories we tell, no, it's got nothing to do with it.
Okay.
We just had this great idea for a female Thor. I wish I could tell you the ins and outs of that, because it's fantastic. And I think when people finally hear the full story, it's going to blow their minds.
We trust Jason Aaron.
Yeah, I can't understand why people are getting upset about it.
Hey.
But it is what it is. But it's some great stuff coming up.
Excellent. And as last question this is like three-dimensional chess for you, because really you started off as an artist, you get into publishing, Event Comics, then Marvel Knights. Was it Event Comics? Forgive me. All right, there you go. Absolutely. You and Jimmy do Marvel Knights. You become editor-in-chief. And as now your palette gets bigger, television, movies, animation and stuff, as an artist and stuff, and now that you are doing these other platforms, these other medias and stuff, how is it, just from a personal standpoint, to play on this wider canvas?
It gets exhausting, but it's also it's a lot of fun. I mean, just recently, I started getting involved in some of our live action stuff. Like there's a Feld live action stunt show that is touring. I believe I believe it officially opens. I think it's August 10th in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center.
Cool.
So I was involved in that. So and that was kind of fun, because I got to also, it was also some great help from the Disney theatrical folks who have incredible experience in that world. They were a great help in sort of helping us learn about the world of those kinds of shows, live action shows. So get an education in that. So that's like a world I never would have dreamt of ever been dealing with, and it's eye opening, and it's kind of cool. So it's great learning those and having those new experiences. So I'm learning a lot of new stuff. Being involved in Netflix stuff. There's some things that we're doing on the Daredevil show that I'm spearheading. That I'm not allowed to say what it is.
Understood.
But I'm just again learning a lot of new things. So that kind of stuff is cool. The downside is there's a lot of traveling. To my job, while I do draw, I don't get to draw as much as I used to. I miss drawing sequentials, because I love to tell stories.
Sure, man.
Covers,
we miss you. We miss you. Absolutely.
Covers are okay.
Yeah.
But, I'd love to draw a story, or a short story, or a book, or a run. But then reality comes in, and I realize, who am I kidding? So someday. But that part I miss. So that's the hard part. Is not having the ability to do that. Coming to Comic-Con and sitting there and realizing I don't have any books out. I used to have books out.
Yeah, man.
I have nothing. So I come around and I wave like the Queen of England and do a panel, and I'm thankful people just still show up and remember who the hell I am. So,
hey, don't kid yourself, man.
So that's kind of cool.
We miss the art. We miss the writing too. Man in the Iron Mask.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Absolutely, man. And seriously, congratulations. I'm glad everything's going as well as it is. I know you're one of the busiest guys out there, so thanks for making time for me.
Absolutely.
And hopefully down the road I'll get you in your office or something like that, and then get you on the phone like we've done in the past and
Absolutely.
stuff. It's a pleasure as always.
Thanks, man.
Okay, next, in 2015, in August of 2015, just over a year from that last conversation, I caught up with Joe in his office. He was kicking back, and we discussed, the success of Guardians, what was ahead, and odd timing, because literally a month later, they announced the end of the Marvel movie panel's involvement with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Of course, they still had an influence on what was happening in television and animation, but surprising, shocking, to say the least, what was to come, and who knew? I mean, this is days before the massive word, and I don't know. Did Joe already know? Was the writing already on the wall? I have no idea. But it was still an interesting conversation. Joe Quesada from August 3rd of 2015 on Word Balloon.
All right, without further ado, I want to get Joe Quesada on because it's always great to talk to Joe and find out what's happening in the world of Marvel. Joe is on his speakerphone. He was relaxed and everything, so there's a little bit of that quality to the phone line, but otherwise it sounds great. You're going to understand every word he says, and it's an excellent conversation. Happy to sit down and spend a minute with one of the makers of Marvel, Joe Quesada, now on Word Balloon. I am catching the mogul in his office reading a script. Man, how Cecil B. DeMille of Joe Quesada.
Yeah, I don't know if mogul's appropriate here, but
well, it's bigger than Best Boy or Grip, isn't it, at this point?
I guess so.
Come on. Chief Creative Officer of Marvel. It's been a year, and I'm happy to talk to you again and get an update on, goddamn, another great 12 months of Marvel being exploited through the comics and the movies and television and beyond. Congratulations on another big year.
Well, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much. It's always it's fun to be a part of. It's just an incredible team that we have, and everybody pulling together to do the stuff we do. And more importantly, it's incredibly rewarding that the fans love it. Because as I always say, it's a very democratic system. Fans vote with their dollars or with their feet, and they seem to be voting with their dollars, which means they're enjoying what we're doing. And hopefully, we can keep that up and do the best we can.
Excellent. I do want to talk about movies and television primarily, but I have to acknowledge Secret Wars because it's always important to mention that you're still very much a part of the comic book world, and you're the first exec I think I've talked to mid-story. I talked to Tom Brevoort before the story and John Hickman, and then mid-story now. I got to tell you, it's a great event. And I mean, I'll be honest, I liked Original Sin a lot. Some of the events before Original Sin, I think, had their little clunky moments. But Secret Wars has just been thrilling. It is legitimately a giant event, and it is universe changing, but it's living up to the hype. At least I think so.
Yeah. Listen, I agree with you, but of course I would, right?
Sure.
But the truth of the matter is that we've been working on this, and in particular the publishing team has been working on this for many, many years. I mean, Jonathan Hickman came to us with the idea years ago, so it's been bubbling to the surface, and he's had a very clear idea of what it should be and where it was going to go. And once I'm happy to see that we're finally in the thick of it, and that fans are enjoying it and they're seeing where we're going. It's a wonderful and I think historic event for Marvel, and I think Axel Alonso, our editor-in-chief, and Tom Brevoort and the whole crew are kicking ass. They really are.
No question, man. No, it's really entertaining, and it gives us an opportunity to really, where the side stories matter in their own way, in a way that they haven't in a lot of times in events, and are their own fun little adventures to follow as well. Planet Hulk, every one of these things. I mean, just to name one off the bat, but all of it, man. Really cool.
Yeah, and it's allowing us to play with some toys that we've all had some great affection for over the years. Some of us from our childhood and some later on, but just sort of properties that have been sitting there and kind of dormant, and we get to rekindle them or reinvent them in a number of different ways. So that also to me is really the fun part of this.
Excellent. Well, I want to talk about Ant-Man and give you guys your props because it's weird. The industry watchers, I think, are still not quite ready to say that it's an unqualified hit, even though it's won the 2 weekends in a row. It's weird to determine what the level of success is for everyone to kind of, I think, go, okay, that was good, and we had another one, versus did it underperform or whatever. Honestly, on its own merits as a movie, I thought it was excellent, and it seems like word of mouth is allowing it, the audience, to find it in a way that maybe the other movies that had that big splash at the beginning, like Guardians and the ones before it, normally have. This one, I think, hopefully will continue to grow as the summer continues.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's a really special movie. It's a lot. It's so much fun, and it just It's got everything you really want in a summer movie, and then it's something you walk out of the movie theater, and I think fans and non-fans walk away and they're smiling. Non-fans, of course, going, "Wow, I didn't know there was a guy named Ant-Man," right? And that's really, really cool. And again, I think that shows the power of the Marvel brand and the power of our creative teams. That we can take something like Ant-Man that the world is not necessarily aware of, and if we do our job right, he becomes a household name.
Tell me about, because I think one of the interesting things, and it kind of happened by accident when Edgar Wright left the project, the different creative voices that are involved in this movie, and I think are all represented well, not knowing whose part was which, and I don't necessarily need to know that, but it just seems like you see Adam McKay's influence in the script, you see Paul Rudd's influence, you see Edgar Wright in this, and then also it's all wrapped around what has been a very successful Marvel adventure movie formula.
Yeah, and then I think you also have characters that come to the forefront, like Michael Pena's character.
Yes.
Which all of a sudden like, wow, that's he's almost a superhero unto himself in a lot of ways. And he really sort of ties it together for us and brings an amazing humanity to it. I just those are the things that you sort of hope happen and really. You can't expect them, but you hope them to happen. As the chemistry between actors and director and writers. So we're really thrilled with so much of that.
Peyton Reed coming into this movie, and really, there've just been things of, movies starting with one director, ending with another. The only comparison I can see, because I really think a lot of what you guys are doing in movies and TV is kind of uncharted waters. The closest thing I can think of are the Bond movies back in the day when, you had these different directors come in, put their stamps on the movies, but also, again, had to still work within the trappings of what audiences were expecting from a James Bond movie experience. And, like you said, Michael Pena is a great example of this great left field character that can come in, stand out, and be effective and stuff. But as someone that is part of the creative process, and you're on the Marvel movie panel, can you quantify what that's been like, now in 12 movies and watching, these different shifts, and, are you able to step back? I mean, is it hard putting all this together, or is it, oh my God, we're not only getting influences from one creative mind here, look at the, half dozen people that have their fingerprints all over Ant-Man.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think with anything, I think with any creative process, in particular Marvel, it's all about collaboration, and it's all about what each individual person brings. I could point to the screen and say, oh, that little bit, that was something that I came up with in the creative committee, or that's something that Brian Bendis suggested, or that's something that Kevin Feige, took and sort of turned on its ear and made it work. There's all those little bits and pieces, but ultimately, when it's, when we look at it from Marvel, you don't really know where it starts and it begins. It just sort of clicks. If it clicks, it's going to work. And really, it's all about story. It's all about story and keeping true to the character's inherent formula. And that's really what we strive for. And then looking at each one of these movies as different within the same superhero genre as a subgenre. So Ant-Man was basically a heist movie. So in that sense, it's different than Winter Soldier, which is sort of, espionage and action espionage and cloak and dagger kind of stuff, and Avengers, which is straight out superhero, balls to the wall kind of stuff. So we try to look at each one of these properties as their own sort of subgenre within the genre, and I think that also helps, and that's also where it differentiates from James Bond, where James Bond is very much James Bond, right? And so when a director comes in, they have a reasonable template of what's to be expected out of a James Bond movie, and then trying to make it great within there. At Marvel, yes, there's a template and a formula to a Marvel character, but then, what can you do with it and turn it on its ear and look at the genre within the genre.
Are you able to then also, when the finished movie comes out, and really Guardians, I think, and Ant-Man in particular in the last year, there just seems to be even more opportunity for comedy. And does it then influence what's coming in phase 3 and phase 4 and say, well, shit, look what we were able to do with these things. Let's try and, as organically as possible. But hey, here are avenues that, again, maybe didn't occur to you guys until the creative process started. Are you able to look back and go, oh, we want more of that? That was, like you said, Michael Pena, perfect example. Not that you're like desperately searching for another Michael Pena, but, like opportunities for a different kind of filmmaking.
I think some of that stuff you can plan for. Some of this stuff has to happen organically. But we also, we understand with our movies that there are certain elements that we think are important to us. Even in our most serious movies, or in our most dramatic movies, I also think that we have to have a sense of humor as well. And I think those moments are important to us at Marvel and have always been important to us at Marvel. And it starts with Stan Lee's self-deprecating humor in his soapbox. All that stuff has been a part of our DNA. And at the same time, we could also look at properties like Daredevil on Netflix, and we could say, you know what, we're going to go darker with this than we ever have. So we break away from the formula a little bit. But even Daredevil has its moments of levity, right? Because
absolutely,
he comes in and says something that just breaks that tension. And I think that's important. I think you have to balance it out. I mean, we certainly never want to get, at least at this stage in the game, we don't want to do anything that is so dour and glum. We want people to walk out of our movies or when they turn off their television, we want them to feel like not only did they experience a great adventure and a great story, but they also want to live in the Marvel universe. They want, they want to be here and be a part of it and say, I could live in a New York where the Avengers, are defending us from alien threats. Even though there's alien threats, it's still a pretty cool world, So we don't want to be so dark and heavy where people go, wow, that was intense, and I'm so thankful. That's not my world. We always want to keep that sense of this is Marvel, this is your universe, and this is your world with just a slight tweak.
Understood, and it's funny. I just spoke to Loeb on Sunday, and heavy television talk because, and I wanted your point of view as well as we mentioned the Daredevil series and Netflix. Mm-hmm. This is, critics have said this, and all the geeks were all saying this as well, and I'm sure you guys inside the House of Ideas are saying it. This was a game changer. I mean, it really, really was. It was a big gamble, and I think it was to great success. I love the ABC shows as well, but as you say, the darkness worked. It did have its moments of levity as well, but it was, in the best sense of the term, adult storytelling going on, and you did it with Daredevil and a guy running around in a superhero costume, and yet it felt like what you guys were going for, that 70s New York crime movie vibe. Yeah. And I mean, obviously that's a testament to the performers and the crew and the writers and the directors and everyone involved. But I mean, this is thrilling, and it's like I said, uncharted waters, it seems, for, because there have been other television and superhero shows and movies about superheroes, but just not only the medium of streaming video, but the type of programming that you guys put together for Daredevil, and I'm assuming, more to follow with Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and the like for the Netflix stuff. But yeah, tell me, now that, the season of Daredevil is over, and as you're getting ready to premiere Jessica Jones and go into production with Luke Cage, like, is there a sense of, wow, we did that? Well, hell, if we could do that with Daredevil, did it open up the creative juices even more for these next Netflix projects in particular?
Well, the plan has always been the plan. And again, this is a testimonial to Jeff and his team and the work that they've done on our television shows. But I think really in this case, it was a matter of the character dictated what was best. When we got Daredevil back from Fox, we could have very easily have said, we'll make Daredevil into a major motion picture. But looking at it and looking at what might be best for the character and the storytelling of the character, we thought, this feels more like episodic TV. It feels like a superhero procedural because of the legal aspects of Matt Murdock, and also the fact that when Daredevil is at its best, when you look at the history of Daredevil comics, when it's truly at its best, it's when it's down and gritty and real world, And it's not quite the world of the Avengers. It's very as I often tell people, the Avengers are about saving the world. Daredevil is about saving a neighborhood.
Yep.
The stakes can still feel the same, even though they may be smaller, because of whatever is important to the people in that neighborhood and what's threatening them. So, in the case of Daredevil, I think it dictated where we needed to go if we wanted to do it right. And then, we had Drew Goddard come on, and then Steve DeKnight as well, who just had this wonderful vision for the show. And again, the vision of the show was, this is again what happens when we're looking at your movies is, the character is iconic. It's been around for much longer than any of us really.
Yeah.
Most of us working on these shows, and it's not broken. The formula is right there. So let's take that formula and adapt it to the medium, and then tweak it for the modern audience. And that just sort of dictated where we went. And then Drew's, I mean, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it to you. Drew's script for the pilot was so real world, and you could feel New York, and you understood these characters, and then there was a moment in the script where, and the scene if you've seen the show, it's a spoiler warning if you haven't, it's in the first episode. Foggy and Matt are being walked through a possible office space by a realtor, and they're haggling about price. And she said, "Well, prices are as low as they've been, so you should buy now because ever since the incident, right?
Yes.
Meaning when the Avengers said in the original script, she said, ever since aliens popped through a portal, and everyone, once we read that moment, we all bumped on it because Drew's script was so grounded in the real world that this mentioning, just blurting out of like aliens popping through an interdimensional portal, just all of a sudden shocked the system and like, wait, what am I watching? Right. So we had to look at a way of wording it that it felt right within the world, and then slowly but surely starting to ease in the rest of the Marvel universe. So you'd hear people talk about, you'd hear Wesley talk about, a guy in an armored suit, a guy with a hammer. But all those moments were very carefully selected to build one upon the other to sort of ease the audience into, oh shit, there's the Avengers live here. That's right, we forgot about that, So, but again, we had a plan, and we knew that this was something different that we haven't done. And all you can hope for is, we got great storytellers, we got great actors, great directors, a great crew, just a great production team all around. All you can hope for is that the fans enjoy it.
Jeff described Daredevil as kind of an homage to French Connection and Taxi Driver and things like that. And I asked him because Jessica Jones and Alias, the original comic book, kind of occupied that same world as Daredevil's Hell's Kitchen, but in a slightly different way. His movie analogy, without spoiling, he said, think Chinatown. And I thought that was interesting. I don't know if a different movie without spoiling comes to mind. And I know that, again, different opportunities for different kind of humor with Jessica Jones in Brian and Mike Gatos's book that I'm sure will be exploited in the series. When you've got somebody like Kristen Ritter that can do comedy as well. But again, it is action adventure, and it's probably her showing her dramatic chops and more the Breaking Bad stuff than what we got in, the Bitch in Floor 2 or whatever the hell that ABC sitcom was that she was on. But, can you, and I'm sorry if there are kids in the room. You said your family was there. I apologize. But, can you quantify like a tone for Jessica Jones without revealing too much?
This was a tough one because I think Jeff named probably the only movie that we can compare it to right now. We could compare it to a few other movies, but I think he would give away a little too much of what makes Jessica Jones different than Daredevil. And the only thing I could say to that is, in the same way that you could look at Captain America: Winter Soldier as sort of a Tom Clancy-esque espionage,
absolutely,
at the superhero genre, and then you can take Ant-Man and look at it as a heist movie within the superhero genre. Daredevil is very much French Connection and Taxi Driver and all those shows and all those movies. And Jessica Jones is, again, taking that sort of dark noirish Chinatown concept, but there's another element to it that I just, if I say it, then it sort of tips off the difference between the two shows.
All right.
So I just want fans to watch it and go, wait a minute, oh my God, look at what's happening here. It's a wonderful, it's another take on the genre, which I think is fun.
That's great, man. That was the beauty of the Max line when it came out, back in the day. And it leads me to another question that's coming up both in the movies and in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it started this season with the Inhumans. Your own NYX was an opportunity to take the mutants to a more grounded, real place. And obviously, there's.
Thank you for remembering that book, by the way.
It was an awesome book, man. Absolutely. And I know it was only about 9 issues or whatever, and we were bummed, but you got busy and Josh got busy and everything, so it got tough to do it. We all understood that. Sure. But in the long run, I am interested because everyone knows Fox has the X-Men in movies, and that obviously maybe presented a problem or not to you guys, but I think the Inhumans, the way that the Inhumans are now being portrayed gives you an opportunity to tell a similar set of adventure stories, taking nothing away from the uniqueness of mutant versus Inhuman, but also that it allows you the opportunity to tell modern stories in the same way that Brian is doing in Powers, both the comic and the TV show, and really show the difference between humans and non-humans in this world. And so that's got to be exciting, and I think was an elegant solution to, well, shit, we don't have the mutants anymore. Here are the Inhumans. Well, wait, we can use the Inhumans in this same way. Was that always the plan, or was it born out of the necessity of, well, the X-Men aren't coming back to our cinematic or TV worlds anytime soon?
Well, without really dealing too much, the one thing I can say is that, we've had a list at Marvel. We have a list, an ongoing list at Marvel of properties that we feel are rich with story potential and potential in other mediums outside of comic books. And we intend to get to each one of them in their time. The Inhumans was right on that list, very much the same way that Guardians of the Galaxy was on that list. I remember meeting, when we were meeting about, what do we feel are potential hot properties, and Guardians immediately bubbled, and we said, this has got something. And I don't want to give you, the other names of that list, but Inhumans was certainly on it, as are other things that you will see as again, everything in its own time. One thing has to build upon the next.
Sure.
But Inhumans was definitely something that we felt was ripe with potential. And look, I mean, it couldn't make me happier because, so much of this stuff is reminiscent to me of when me and Jimmy launched Marvel Knights. I mean,
absolutely.
Was one of those things we looked at and we said, wow, there is so much great stuff here. All it needs is a little love and care and see where it goes.
Well, that's the thing, Joe, honestly, and I've said this to you before in recent interviews that we've done. I just think you've got such a unique vantage point because, like you said, when you and Jimmy Palmiotti started Marvel Knights at a very low point in Marvel's history, and you were able to take a group of characters and teams and say, no, there's good stuff here. We just need to get them in the right hands and the right creative hands, and this stuff can be fantastic again. And out of literally the ashes that a lot of these, characters had kind of devolved to, you guys put new spins on them or got the right creators to put spins on them, from Kevin Smith and Paul Jenkins to Jay Lee and, yourself, obviously, and that you're both writing and drawing contributions to Daredevil and the like. I mean, that's fantastic. And I really, Chris Priest's Black Panther, and I'm going to be talking to Reggie. I'm going to talk to Reggie Hudlin in a couple of days, and I'm looking forward to.
Oh, cool.
Oh yeah, man. No, I mean, that's the thing. I really think that all this started back then with Marvel Knights, and it's great, and it must be great. Can you talk about playing this stuff out now on a bigger stage? I mean, it's one thing to put them out in monthly comic books, but, Christ, I mean, several television shows, a couple movies a year. I mean, good God. And, Marvel Phase 4, shit, we're talking about, movies that are going to be in our, when you and I are collecting our Social Security checks and stuff. I mean, this is insane that, this kind of momentum is being built. And seriously, I know, and you're the first one to say that it takes a big team to make all this happen, but it's got to be great being ringside and also being one of the guys that was able to flip the lever and go, no, we're going this way and this is going to work.
Well, again, no decisions here are made single-handedly. It is, we sit and discuss This list I talked to you about, about characters and properties that we feel we'd like to get to. It's not one man making or one woman making this decision of this is the way it's going to go. It is a group of us, and by the way, we shift gears several times, depending on what the audience is gravitating to. Because tastes change and the best laid plans, right?
Right.
There's always the wonderful thing about Marvel, this Marvel modern incarnation of Marvel, is that there's a real strategy in place, and people talk about it because again, it's not just what properties are great to develop, but are they better to be developed as a major motion picture? Are they better to be developed as television? Where in the world of television should it live if it is television? All those discussions happen, and we at the end of the day, you still have to cross your fingers and hope that you've made the right decision. And we've been very lucky, but at the same time, we don't take for granted the fact that we're always going to have this incredible amount of success. It would be great if we do. We're always going to be striving for it, but I don't think you could ever take it for granted. I know that during my days when I ran the publishing division, I don't know if I lived like a child with the depression or not, but I always anticipated that this may not last. Things could happen. The economy could crumble, and nobody could want comics, or we could fumble the ball somewhere down the road. So we just got to stay on our toes and stay vigilant. And I mean, that's all we can really do is just continue to try to put out the best stories we can, and with the best strategy behind it as well. So we have a great library of characters. I always say that being a creator at Marvel is like being a creative trust fund baby, because it's like looking in the bank and all of a sudden, wow, I got all this money, and we look at our library, it's like, oh my God, look at all the stuff we have. And not only that, but just stuff that's been sitting around that people forgot about. People forget that really the very first successful Marvel movie was Blade, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
We didn't produce it, but here was a character that wouldn't sell a lick as a comic book. It just never caught on. It didn't mean that the character that was there anything wrong with the character. It just meant that maybe it was a better property for major motion picture, and it's still a great movie. It still holds up beautifully, and I think defined the whole vampire genre.
Absolutely, man. No, I agree with you, and to be honest, I kind of hope that the powers that be and Snipes can get together and we do see a Blade 4, because I think there's a story to be told, and I think he's age appropriate. It would be interesting to see Old Man Blade, just as much as Old Man Logan is out there.
Well, while I can't speak about any of that stuff, what projects we have in development and things like that. What I can say is that it is one of my all-time favorite characters. I love the Blade character, and I think it's such a wonderful premise. But who knows?
Well, and I wonder, and I'll be interested in your comment on this, because I had asked Loeb and Brevoort this before, because, and everyone is talking about this already, but I was doing this a couple months ago. I'm not claiming any genius here, but I connected the dots in the same way that anyone who watches franchise movies or television would, and we saw a 60-plus-year-old William Shatner still as Captain Kirk. We're reaching those age possibilities with Downey Jr. and your first wave of Marvel heroes, and and I wonder, it's interesting that at first it didn't occur to me, but with the changes in the comics and Sam Wilson as Captain America or a female Thor, if you guys are almost inventing good creative solutions to what might become a problem as you enter Phase 4 or whenever, post Avengers Infinity War happens, of, is the public going to still want and demand to see Tony Stark as Robert Downey Jr.? Because he really, Downey has obviously, put his persona onto Tony Stark and made it with an awareness that obviously was never achieved before. And it's a good problem to have. That's how Loeb said it. He goes, hey, that's a nice $1 billion problem to have, and good on us that, that's the kind of thing that we're going to still be around in 10 years to have that discussion. Right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you, are these female Thors and people of color and other people assuming the mantle? These are the possibilities that are out there that you're exploring now in the comics. It's interesting to wonder what you guys might be doing TV and movie-wise when those kinds of decisions need to be addressed.
Well, look, I mean, the only thing I could speak to with respect to that is that our comic division is trying to tell the best stories possible, and that's all we've ever tried to do. So, when we created the Ultimate Universe, it wasn't with the idea that we're going to streamline stuff so that when we get around to making movies, we'll have all these stories or these new incarnations of the characters that might help with a more streamlined version for motion pictures. That wasn't the goal, and can never be the goal. The one sort of rule of operation in publishing is just write great stories, draw great stories. It is essentially the R&D division of Marvel. Mm-hmm. Everything starts there. Everything that we do outside of comics, whether it's animation, television, video games, movies, all that stuff, all those different mediums are there to really cherry pick what's been going on in publishing. It has to start in publishing. It's so important to us. It's our lifeblood. So publishing, and again, because publishing has when you write and draw an epic story like Secret Wars, you have an unlimited budget, so to speak, special effects budget. You can do anything you want. Mm-hmm. And so comics are as much in our untapped imagination as possible. That's what we want. And then from there, who knows what bubbles to the surface, right? Who knows what becomes the next big thing? And sometimes those next big things become things that you start seeing in other aspects of the Marvel universe, whether it's our movie and television universe or our animation universe. That's the goal. That's really the goal, is to keep those ideas alive and vibrant. Okay. So the fact that we have all these different incarnations of the characters, and we have a female Thor, and we see Sam as Cap, that stuff is fantastic because, first of all, it's a great story to follow, and it's a great story to see where it goes and see where these characters end up. A perfect example of this is Winter Soldier. When Buckley came back, and Ed Brubaker created the Winter Soldier around Buckley's persona. The fact that Ed was able to do that obviously, influenced the motion picture and gave us an incredible character to work with.
You bet.
So our hope is that publishing continues to be as creative and wonderfully inventive as it's ever been.
Excellent. You've as you said at the beginning of our conversation, you were reading a script, and last year you were reminding me that you were working on, I think, maybe the Marvel Experience or a live-action stage show that was happening at amusement parks and stuff. What, if I could ask real fast, because I was looking forward to the Marvel Experience coming to Chicago, and all of a sudden, it got canceled. Is it being retooled, or?
Although that's a different show. I was working on the Feld show.
Okay. Oh yes, and that was
that's still around.
Okay, the Feld show's running, but also, are you able to comment on what happened in the Marvel Experience?
No, I can't. I mean,
okay.
They have a license to do the show, so I really don't know the ins and outs of that stuff.
Okay.
Those are business decisions, and I try to stay away from those as far as possible. I come in when they need to talk about script and character approvals and things like that. So, and it's the same thing with the Feld show. I sat there and worked with their director, and then they go out and they make that show, and they promote their shows, and hopefully the audiences come.
Okay, that's cool. Well, and I guess that's still coming to Chicago, I think, in the fall or whatever. And that's more of a kids show, correct?
It's an amazingly fun kids show. Yes, absolutely. It's stunts, explosions, flying motorcycles, stuff like that. It's
that's cool. That's all right. I just don't want to, that's age appropriate for little kids. That's hard. That's good. That's fun.
Listen, I'm often pleased when I get emails from dads and say, you know what, I took my 10-year-old boy to this show, and forget it, I liked it more than he did. I was thrilled. And like, that's great.
That's excellent. Well, that reminds us me when we were kids, and they had the water skiing shows on the East Coast of the distinguished competition, of course, across the street and everything.
Right.
So I can, and Marvel had its big Broadway shows and things like that. That's cool. Well, Joe, you've been very kind with your time, and I know you got your family waiting, so I'll wrap up, but say thanks again for checking in. Way to go. And seriously, you and the whole team, No, seriously, very successful year. Really excited about what's coming down the pike in the fall and in 2016, both small screen, big screen, and, of course, in the comics. And hopefully in a few months we can check back and have a new talk.
Let's talk. Absolutely. Anytime, man.
And then, boom, the announcement came. Kevin Feige splits off from the influence of Ike Perlmutter and is able to call his own shots with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And an unfortunate byproduct of that was the dissolvement of the Marvel movie panel with Bendis and Quesada and Dan Buckley and Alan Light roping in various creators when needed to provide extra perspective on various, creations and stuff and heroes and villains. But it was weird. And thankfully I got Bendis to sit down and talk about it for about 30 or 5 minutes or so. And he took all my questions. Some of them he couldn't answer because of non-disclosure agreements. He was very careful with what he did say, but he was able to still give us some perspective regardless, and also assure us that even though things were ending in 2015, there was still a bit of the Marvel movie panel's influence on movies to come, Ant-Man and Doctor Strange among them. So it was actually, I guess this was right after Ant-Man. And in fact, you'll forgive me, I'm kind of recording these intros without really going over the conversation. Shame on me, I know. But this was after the release of Ant-Man. But I guess, he was saying that Doctor Strange, Bendis was saying, that was the last film that would really have the influence of the movie panel on the screenplay. So let's have this portion of the conversation. Brian Michael Bendis from September 5th of 2015, again, just over a month after that nice, breezy conversation with Joe Quesada. Who knew what was coming? But we found out. And, again, 4 years later, the wrap-up of Endgame, everything that's coming up in the new phase of Marvel films, everything's fine. And the comic books are fine, still great. Looking forward to the influence of Kevin Feige in the comic book world. But let's go back and get more perspective with this conversation of me and Brian Michael Bendis on Word Balloon.
I know you're dying to talk about it, and
Yes.
It'll get a little weird here because of all the people involved in whatever this story is, and what we're getting now is a lot of unsubstantiated quotes and things like that.
Should I title it, at least for what we know from the stand?
Sure, go ahead. No.
Okay. I mean, the word is that now Kevin Feige, and you might be able to clarify this more, reports directly to Disney, no longer to Ike Perlmutter, and as a byproduct of that, the Marvel Creative Movie Panel has disbanded. And at least that is the report that I am hearing.
Yes, and of all the people involved in this story, I am the only one that I know of who has a non-disclosure agreement, yet a very public profile. So, if you want to talk to me about it, I'm easier to
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sorry, our time is up. That would be Brian's lawyer indicating that he is reaching a red point. So let's move on now to film for the 40s.
No, I have people texting me all day, but
that's Cal Fegley from CBR right now. What the hell's going on? Talk to me.
No, I will tell you that I'm not allowed to talk about anything, good or bad. Like, there's good things, and I can't talk about those. Like, I'm not allowed to talk about anything legally. So it's weird that I'm the most accessible person in a story, and I'm not allowed to say a damn thing. You know what I mean? So I apologize for that. Now, that said, what I found very interesting, I know you like this shit too, is, okay, so there's a story, and it was run on a lot of different websites multiple times. Like, some of it was multiple headlines. So it's certainly by no means the most important story of all time or ever, but it was worth more than one article by many, many things. I am named in almost all of them that I can tell. Guess how many media requests I received on this subject in the last 2 days?
100.
One. One person, and I'll even say who it was, at Albert Ching.
Yeah, we're going to talk tonight anyway, so go on.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about you, because you knew what we were talking about. Albert Ching at Comic Book Resources is the only person in all of entertainment media who reached out to me to ask for my comment. So everything you've read is people cutting and pasting other people's things that they had. Isn't that fascinating? And I truly don't care. I don't want to be part of any of this, you know. But I've just, as a journalism nerd, as you are, as I am, it is fascinating how far things have fallen. That a story that was worth reporting on more than once, no one did their own work at all. No one reached out to anybody to ask for a comment or opinion.
And you know this because you've talked to Buckley and Quesada, the other two.
I'm just talking about me. All right.
Okay.
And here I am.
That Albert's the person that's contacted you, and despite all these other news sites reporting on the story,
nobody did any homework. They just cut and pasted someone else's stuff.
Right.
Fascinating. That's how far. Yep. And then and this is stupid.
I know you're dying to talk about it. And
thing that really
it'll get a little weird.
Nobody
here
even knew that all the people involved, except for I think me talking about it. I don't think anyone else has ever talked about it. And what we're getting now is a lot of. I can't remember.
Well, when I have Joe on, I always talk to him about it.
Things like that.
Yeah. Well, I ask him, should I title it? And I'm always interested in whatever contributions the committee made to the film. The word is that as each film has come out, Kevin Feige and you might be able to clarify this more. Yeah, I've asked Joe questions. Reports directly to Disney, no longer to Perlmutter, and is more worried about NDAs than anyone I know, including you. The Marvel Creative
and I got to tell you, and this is I know Dan very well.
Disbanded.
You would love to have Dan on the show. He truly would be a fascinating guest, and I'm not rubbing it in. But in one of the things I love about him is that he wouldn't go do an interview. I am the only one that I know of who has a non-disclosure agreement. You know what I mean? Like he wouldn't even do that. A very public.
Well, no, I understand.
So anyway, if you want to talk to me about it, how easier to silly this story is in relation to the.
I'm sorry, our time is up. That would be Brian's lawyer indicating that he is
put into the reporting of it.
So let's move on now to
what's going on with real stories. It's just a reminder, like holy shit. And then it's also just But
people believe in whatever they read.
That's Cal Begley from CBR right now. What the hell's going on? I also know that the amount of comic journalists out there that are actually getting paid to do what they do.
I'm not allowed to talk about anything,
and I'm not
good
giving
or bad.
them excuses.
There's good things, and I can't talk about those.
I'm sure that's why you get this kind of five-year-olds attacking a soccer ball kind of mentality of, that's the story, all right, and we're all just going to
accessible person. Yeah, and I don't want to story, and I'm not allowed to say a damn thing. It just was fascinating to me. You know what I mean? So I apologize for that. The realities of how it affects me are, as I just posted on Tumblr, what I found very interesting, I know you like this shit too. So there's no change in my life. There's a story, and it was run on a lot of different websites. Completely fired from Marvel multiple times. Some of it was multiple at all. So it's certainly by no means
under contract. I just resigned last year, so I'm under contract.
But it was worth
for quite a while.
More than one article by many things.
You know, it just so happened to be that today
all of them that I talked to. Guess how many media
Joe and
I received on this subject.
Emailed back and forth with Dan about this cool shit that we got coming. That we're all very excited about. So. Like my day actually,
one person, and I'll even say who it was,
if that makes sense.
So the rest of it,
we're going to talk tonight anyway. So go on.
I don't see any official statement from anybody that's been made. Albert King at Comic Book Resources is the only person
I can comment
in all of entertainment media.
Does that make sense?
Who reached out to me?
Yeah.
I know this sounds frustrating, but I really did sign an NDA the size of the phone book.
I get that.
People cutting and pasting other people's, and I did voice that how it's not fair that I had. Isn't that fascinating?
I'm the one on the podcast, I can't say shit.
I truly don't care. I don't want to be part of any of this, you know. But I just, as a journalism nerd, as you are, as I am.
Well, there's two things.
It is
One,
fascinating
obviously,
how far
this represents. This is
that
all
was worth
editorial.
reporting
This
on more than once. No one did their own work.
A potential shift
at all
in the tone
no
of the Marvel
reached out
movies.
To anybody
I
to
think
for a comment
that most
or opinion.
people would say that, and you know this because you've talked to Buckley and Quesada,
I'm just talking about
has
me.
mostly been
right?
positive.
Okay.
And
here
the big
I am,
difference has been the involvement of you, and despite all these other
from the comic
news sites
book
reporting
side,
on the story,
nobody
being involved
did any
in the
homework.
movies,
They just cut and
that's
pasted someone
obviously
else's
about
stuff.
to change,
right?
Are you even able
That's
to
how
say
far.
that?
Okay, and this is stupid.
It sounded like Civil War was something that the
really
creative panel was involved with.
Even
Is
knew
Doctor
the
Strange the last production
except for, I
that
think,
you guys were involved with?
I don't think anyone else has ever talked about it. I don't think I am. I can't remember.
When I have Joe on, I'm
thinking back to what we talked about. I do think I do have talked about
whatever contributions the committee made to the films.
I don't know what I'm
each film has come out since. I've been talking to you guys. Yeah, I've asked Joe questions. Dan won't talk honestly, unless is more worried about NDAs than anyone I know, including
you know what? And I got to tell you, and this is I know Dan very well.
Episode that might be kind of a Zapruder film where we're going to I'll probably edit together just various things about the creative panel.
One of the things I love about him is that he wouldn't go do an interview.
It was just interesting conversation.
We couldn't do. You know what I mean? Like he wouldn't even do that.
History will someday tell the story of how much involvement there was by this panel during this period, and truly when this period ended.
You know,
so and hey, I hope things do relax, and if you are able to talk
about the world, maybe in a month effort we can talk more openly. I just reporting of it.
There's that too.
And you know what I mean? And what's going on with real stories. Because I like to talk about this stuff, and it's just a reminder of like holy shit. It is literally not mine to talk about. It is people believe in whatever they read. It's very egregious of me as
I
talking
also
about
know that the amount
spoilers
of
in someone else's
comic
book.
journalists
just not
out there that are actually getting paid to do what they do and have the time. And I'm not giving them excuses.
I do. It's funny how it becomes telephone and like the story that was reported isn't enough, so people add things onto it.
Oh, that's the story. All right.
I heard Axel murdered. So I don't want to go. And I'm not doing that. It's weird to hop online and see a narrative being displayed. The realities of how it affects my actual life. I just posted on Tumblr is not that. So that's our. You know what I mean? Very.
I'm
there's
sorry.
No change in my life. Like there was some reports that everyone saw it, so it's not like that is no one knows. Obviously not true at all on any level. That's I'm under contract. I just resigned. That was so disappointing. So I'm under contract for quite a while.
No, I was hoping more
it just so happened to be that today I talked to Axel and
we all felt again.
Joe
I think
and
for the most part because there are people that might have had certain problems with certain movies or whatever.
This cool shit that we got coming.
I believe that
they were all very excited about.
The creative panel was a positive
my
thing.
Day actually
just like having Jeff Loeb in charge of Marvel Television is a positive thing because it's people who understand the characters.
I don't see any official statement from anybody that's been made.
I just talked to Rob Meyer Burnett.
That's why there's nothing I can comment on.
Who made that William Shatner comedy Free
Does
Enterprise.
That make sense?
Kind of making fun of the Star Trek fans. Eric McCormick from Will and Grace was in it.
I know this sounds frustrating, but I really did sign an NDA the size of the phone book.
Not the one with Chekhov, the other one.
And I just,
he was telling me that, for the longest time, Paramount did not want Star Trek fans working on Star Trek
and I can't
because they felt they were too close to the material, and it really wasn't. What's that?
It's so funny. I've heard this before.
That, and it really wasn't until that last season of Enterprise. Obviously, that they kind of led. And I was forgetting who the showrunner was. Tracy Tremay? This is all editorial. I think this represents. He later was on CSI. A potential shift, which in the tone of the Marvel movies. I think. That most people showrunner that people might know that, and he also did Odyssey 5. But anyway, he was a Star Trek fan, and they were some of the best Enterprise episodes because it tied into the lore. Has been the involvement of universe people from really comic books, and had other writers being involved in the same way. That's obviously about to change.
Years ago,
are you even able to say
probably
that?
More than I care to admit.
It sounded like Civil War was something that the creative panel was involved with. Is Doctor Strange the last production that you guys were involved with? Are you able to even tell me that?
I was like, well,
I don't think I
weren't you there? I mean, what?
Okay.
No, but
I'm not right.
You weren't you a fan of Kirby, and that's why. And I'm thinking back to what we talked about. I do think I do have talked about it. I was involved for you and not for us. It was a weird. Yeah, it was a weird insult.
Honestly, Jemis, I think, he took over. Full disclosure, honestly, unless
a little bit. I actually want to know a little bit more about.
I don't think that's the case.
Bill and I would have been in a room with
Word Balloon episode that might be kind of a Zapruder film where we're going to I'll probably edit together just various things about the creative panel, because much like the creative summits for the comics, it was just interesting conversation.
I was this perfect
history will someday tell the story of how much involvement there was by this panel during this period, and truly when this period ended.
Craftsmen,
so, hey, I hope things do relax, and if you are able to talk,
maybe in a heroes, it was like mixed thing. I just you would want to reproduce in a laboratory. Because I like to talk about this stuff and creators or something. It was really funny. But in this instance, it is literally not mine to talk about. You're like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. You're like reaching for numbers in the sky that none of us as talking about trying to make something in someone else's book. It is just not mine to talk about. And you're driving yourself insane trying to do it. So it was more like that. It's funny how it becomes telephone, and then like the story that was reported as enough so people add things onto it. That wasn't the only requirement. I heard Axel wanted more things out of it, and so it was more like that. But the insults, it's weird to hop online and see a narrative being displayed. They're just fans, and my actual life. I think that's a really good news. Is not wouldn't you want fans? So that's weird. Of course, you know what I mean.
I'm sorry,
but I do agree with Bill's thing where it has to be. Everyone saw it, so it's not like no one knows what we're talking about. Not just, but it's a love of character. Do you love the character, or you love the character of your childhood? That was so disappointing to you. You thought you were going to get the characters have to stay alive. They have to keep moving and changing and evolving.
More just in terms of, like I said,
repeating things from your childhood, then you're probably going to just be crappy.
We all felt, again, I think for the most part, because there are people that might have had certain problems with certain movies or whatever. Sure, but I believe that the creative panel was a positive thing, just like having Jeff Loeb in charge of Marvel Television is a positive thing, because it's people who understand the characters. So much. And I think that,
remind yourself what you liked about it is that he went off the rails and tried something else.
Free Enterprise.
So that's what you should do.
Kind of making fun of the Star Trek fans. Eric McCormick, Will and Grace was in it.
Imitate him,
and Rob is one of those guys making the Star Trek fan film. And not the one who check out the other one.
That big mixture. And I know you're getting back to what I know we're derailing again, because you're talking about
Star Trek
the creative committee was this
because they felt they were too close to the material, and it really was. What's that?
It's so funny. I've heard this before. Yeah, it's so funny. People who really give a shit.
And it really wasn't until that last season of Enterprise
that
they kind of led. And I always forget who the showrunner was. It Tracy Torment.
I enjoyed every single second.
He later was on CSI, and I forget
because it was that.
Danny Koto.
Okay. It was a brain trust of people who really give a shit and aren't afraid to speak their mind.
He also did Odyssey 5. But anyway, he was a Star Trek fan, and they were some of the best Enterprise episodes because it tied into the lore, and it was obvious that he understood the universe and really brought the, and had other writers that felt the same way.
From many people, and watched many people behave in an environment that was inspiring. John Byrne had that whole. I'm going to be classy like that. There's too many fans working at Marvel. We're just fanboys. And there weren't real Marvel comics and creatives. I was like taking notes. Weren't you there in a certain way with class and stuff? Right. It's very inspiring. Weren't you a fan of Kirby? And that's why isn't the line very clear that you were a fan and wanted to do it? Notes is an example. Like getting you and not people, it can be hard. It was a weird insult. You know what I mean? It's critique. It's difficult.
He took over,
and there's
had that kind of
ways to handle it. A little bit. Even this one I know the coolest cucumber can crack under it. Bill and I would have been in a room with Bill. Bill just reminds you. Look how cool very happy with me and Mark. Even if they go home and he would out loud try to. It's cool to watch. By the way, how to reproduce us. I'm saying. You know, like I was
the hamster, however.
I used to be an Nash Marvel fanboy and indie comics guy and you know, diehard craftsman, like obsessive craft, right?
You know,
and Mark was like this anarchist.
I'm gonna try one more question.
Who loves heroes. It was like this mix of things that he would want
together a sentence using all the words
reproduce in a laboratory out of other creators or something. It was really funny, and I felt he was, and I told him this at the time. I go, you're like Russell Crowe in A Beautiful Mind. You're like reaching for numbers in the sky that none of us can see.
Well, I mean, again, you know, we had a conversation. People are going to hear it at the end of this
and you're driving yourself insane trying to do it
because we recorded a month ago and then we got busy.
It was more like that than anything. Like
when we were talking then,
if all of a sudden we found a month younger
fans of the characters, but you didn't.
Much more optimistic.
That wasn't the only requirement.
You wanted more things out of it.
I was thinking that I didn't.
It was more like that, but
in as good a mood as actually was when we recorded last
make
time.
Comics, so
they're just fans. I'm like, I think that's really good news.
Good. I'm teasing.
Like, wouldn't you want fans?
No, but honestly, well, my point is, you talked about the Netflix
but I do
Jessica
agree
Jones
with
show.
Bill's thing where it has to be.
Are you able to say anything about? You know, they've made a bunch of casting announcements on Luke Cage.
It's love of character.
You know,
you love the character, or you love the character of your childhood.
Involvement with the Luke Cage stuff?
No, the characters have to stay alive. They have to keep moving. Just when I hear my friends talking about. And
stuff they're doing.
If you're just repeating things from your childhood, then they're probably
I don't have anything to do with it. It looks exciting.
We've seen Daredevil. I've seen some of Jessica.
So
that's
always. I'm looking forward to Luke Cage being great. Now that we have to fight happier on the planet Earth. It's a really good Luke Cage. Early stays on Daredevil.
Yeah, we all know you're a big Luke Cage fan.
It is also like overwhelming because you loved it so much. Did you think we'd get a Luke Cage show?
Remind yourself of what you liked about it.
Casting announcement today,
he went off the rails and tried something else.
So that's what you should do. If you really are a fan.
Yeah.
You should do what he did,
and also I love that Rosario's coming back as Night Nurse.
Do your own version of taking it,
or whatever.
I hope so.
Technically not Night Nurse, but we think she's Night Nurse.
And I know you're getting back to what I know we're derailing again. What you're talking about? The creative committee was this.
And I forget the specifics, but that I think technically maybe. The potential for a different character to be Night Nurse is still out there.
People who really give a shit.
I don't know, but I always have this. You know, it's funny because
that level.
Getting back to
tell you the question
you're
really asking.
I enjoyed
every single second.
Some people and I
totally understand
because it was that. It was where I'm at with all this stuff.
The people really give a shit.
Some people think
I'm afraid to speak their mind.
And every single facet of every single project and
production.
And I told you personally, for me,
I've said on this program. It is not true. I think I'm more successful many times in my life because of my time there. I've
people who take credit or the illusion of credit
watched
for something they don't do.
People behave
so I try to make it
in an environment that was inspiring, and I go, all right, I'm going to be classy like that motherfucker.
All the more complicated
because when you see Jones and certain, you know what I mean, like things that creatives. Taking that I'm known for in a certain way with class.
So I don't work on the Netflix shows right now.
There's not to say that if something will happen down the line,
like notes is an example.
But right now,
getting notes from people, it can be hard.
I'm working on my own show. It's just it's critique. It's difficult. And there's ways to handle it.
In your role in
even the coolest cucumber can crack under it.
That also involved.
But when you see people just being cool,
looking at, hey, this is what we're thinking.
Look how cool
you got a second to give us any thoughts. And again, not maybe even official notes, but just even that cursory as a creative. Like under as Joe does as creative consultant of Marvel. And I don't know how this all impacts Joe's job, obviously.
Well, he's
however,
he used to be an editor of Marvel Disney. It's quite different.
Used to have
he's an executive of the corporation.
Say that again, because not anymore. You had a digital glitch, nice. So okay, Joe is.
So
you can't. I'm going to try one more question.
He's an executive of the corporation,
and you can keep. You can stitch together a sentence using all the words I've said to make whatever you want.
There's quite a difference between where we are in the spectrum of things.
I don't like Venom. I run the company, and one of the things the company does
again, we had a conversation. People are going to hear it at the end of this specific part of the conversation because we recorded a month ago and then we got busy and we had to stop. When we were talking then, your capacity on the Marvel creative committee, and we was a different aspect of your deal as a freelancer to Marvel. You're doing business with Marvel.
In as good a mood as I actually was when we recorded last night.
And there's other things too that people don't know about.
I think I actually sound in a better mood today.
And again, because the non-disclosure agreement has to stay that way. There's
but honestly,
things that I offer Marvel.
You talked about the Netflix Jessica Jones show.
Yeah, all of which I really like doing.
Are you able to say anything about? They made a bunch of casting announcements on Luke Cage.
The real rub of my life.
Have you had any cursory involvement with the Luke Cage
stuff? Do I know a lot of cool shit?
You don't know. When I hear my friends talking about,
I know
stuff they're doing, but I don't know. I'm working on Powers.
The bummer is I can't tell anybody.
I don't have anything to do with it. It looks exciting.
I can't tell.
We've seen Daredevil.
Cool
I've
shit,
seen
and then it gets announced, and they look at me like, "Oh, you fucked yourself on episode."
I'm looking forward to Luke Cage being great. Nothing would make me happier on the planet Earth.
The rub, as they say,
really good Luke Cage.
That I know all this cool stuff.
Yeah, we all know you're a big Luke Cage
fan. I can't tell anybody, including my wife.
In a million years, did you think
she doesn't know who Cottonmouth is?
So I don't think she would even care. When you saw the casting announcements today, which you're like, "Oh my God, we're getting Misty Knight."
Terrible.
He got cool.
And also I love that Rosario's coming back as Night Nurse
today.
Whatever.
I'm
technically not Night Nurse, but we think she's Night Nurse. That's where Luke Cage is. Whatever.
There's tons of Luke Cage. Did they say something else?
Well, that's why I forget the specifics, but I was happy with what I saw, and the potential for a different character to be Night Nurse is still out there.
They announced. I don't know, but I always have this. It's funny.
They cast Blake and
in the Daredevil show.
The question that you're really asking.
There's this
all kinds of announcements.
Which one's
some people and I totally understand the character
totally
get fraternity where I'm at with all this stuff
for New York City,
and some people think I'm involved in every single facet of every single comic project and production.
Is that a Denny O'Neil character?
Which I've said on this program.
I remember.
It's not true.
Yeah.
Many times
I knew my Daredevil. I'm like,
people who take credit or give the illusion of credit for something they don't do.
This is
so I try to make it very clear.
Deep track.
What everyone's jobs are.
Yeah, clearly.
And I know it's made all the more complicated because I like
Jessica Jones and
that's the fun of the films and the TV and the follow through from comics to TV to film.
So yeah, I don't work on the Netflix shows right now.
Obviously, I mean that's the thing. I
understand down the line where I will
speculation,
but right now
I
do not.
Also understand that Marvel is preparing on how to explain if they need to again in what this means moving forward because I'm sure these panel and everything will pop up that also in other forums. I'm sure even next looking at PR thing will likely don't have something thoughts. And again, not maybe even official notes.
And again,
but just even that cursory as a creative.
For many years to come,
like under as Joe does as creative consultant of Marvel, and I don't know how this all impacts Joe's job.
Yeah, here it is. Hunger Games actor. Mahershala Ali casts his Cottonmouth, executive of the corporation.
So say that again.
See?
You had a digital glitch there, so
okay, no. So
all right, Joe is. I only saw the first Hunger Games. I'm like, all right, whatever. Good luck with that.
You're not a 12-year-old girl. I'm a freelancer with benefits.
Not a 12-year-old girl.
Well, that's what I said, which is more than I did with Twilight.
There's quite a difference between where we are.
Listen, if you get a chance, the Twilight movies with riff tracks are brilliant.
I run the company, the Mystery Science Theater, and one of the things the company does is
wonderful.
That was really about
do services for Marvel Comics.
And they had
and Joe is an officer of this.
And Tom Servo goes, "That's all the Academy needed to hear." Your capacity on the Marvel Creative Committee was a different aspect of
commentary.
Your deal as a freelancer to Marvel. What's your guest starter says with Marvel? My name is Electric Nachos.
It's in addition to my exclusivity.
Your name is Electric Nachos.
And there's other stuff that people don't know about.
Daredevil
and
is
again, because of non-disclosure agreement, it has to stay that way. There's things that I offer.
I'm much more gentle about
in part of my exclusivity. All of which I really like doing. Now, what you're feeling here is
I still haven't seen it.
The real rub of my life, the real Twilight Zone thing, is that do I know a lot of cool shit that you don't know? Way before
absolutely, I read
all kinds of cool shit. That Daredevil movie.
The bummer is
I can't tell anybody.
Like really likes it, and
I can't tell.
It just didn't
cool
translate.
Shit, and then it gets announced, and they look at me like, they were so nice. It was the first time I ever got a shout out in the movie. It was very, very sweet. So
that's right.
The rub, I was torn between.
I know all this cool
how
stuff,
happy I was,
and I can't tell anybody, including my buddy David Mack, and then.
But she doesn't know who Cottonmouth is, so I don't think she would even care if I told her.
You guys were fictitious opponents of Jack Murdoch.
Yeah, and for me, I hadn't. It
wasn't in the draft of the script I read.
They put it in while they were filming it, and I just started Daredevil.
I'm not
while they were filming, and I had done enough on Daredevil to.
That's where Luke Cage is. All right,
get the shout out. That was a huge win for me.
I sure keep up with
they
all
liked
of
my
it either,
Daredevil enough that
I was happy with what I saw.
On the Frank Miller list,
they cast Blake Tower in the Daredevil
and then of
show?
course the bonus stuff on the DVD.
Yeah.
You guys, Blake Colin? Is that the actor?
No, Blake Tower is the character. I was district attorney.
Absolutely. If you get the DVD,
Daredevil.
I think it's probably on YouTube. If you get a Daredevil documentary.
Is that a Denny O'Neil character? Who is that? This again, Rob Burnett, that Star Trek guy I mentioned earlier. He used to produce a lot of that stuff. I thought I knew my He produced the X-Men ones for the Singer movies and the Aliens movies and stuff. And it's sad. He even said, he goes, with streaming,
deep tracks. That's what they say.
And also that people just want the movie and want the cheapest DVD possible, and even Blu-rays. Those kind of special features that's been the fun of the films and the TV and the follow-through from comics.
I was literally just in a meeting as we were discussing how to do some kind of
that's the thing.
Talking Dead type of show.
The speculation, and also I also understand that Marvel is preparing on how to, explain if they need to what this means moving forward, because I'm sure these questions will pop up in other forums. I'm sure Axel's next CBR thing will likely, have something. I can't be your Harvard.
And again, there's always going to be that weird thing for many years to come.
I am personally inviting you.
People are. I don't know if people are going to be aware.
The funeral of Retro Girl.
Here it is.
Hunger Games actor. And
Muhammad Ali cast some of the
views with people we love.
Great. Oh, that's really nice.
Do you want to get your ass down to Atlanta?
I'm not. I haven't watched. I only saw the first Hunger Games. I'm like, all right, whatever.
Put on your funeral clothes and come on down. You're not a 12-year-old girl?
How many days do you need me down there?
I don't know. You're not a 12-year-old girl?
I'll try. Well, that's what I said, which is more than I did with Twilight. So that's very sweet.
If you get a chance, the Twilight movies with riff tracks. I was,
I'm sure.
I was the Mystery Science Theater going to do it privately, but why not do it on a podcast? We're looking for a way to get some of the readers and fans of the show down for the funeral as well. That would be a cool way. It's coming up fast. I don't know how successful we'll be in doing that, but I thought that would be a nice, tip of the yarmulke to our diehards. We're not going to fly anybody in, but
Jeff Garner says, my name is Electric Nacho, but I can switch names like Nicole, and if it's, God, if you could shoot on a weekend, I could say, oh, man,
it's one of my favorite riff tracks. Not on the weekend.
That
is a great one.
Never on a Sunday, I understand. I'm much more gentle right? You've taken the wits out of myself not being able to talk about any of the Coolio
I know. And I'm sorry.
version of the film.
I did want to talk to you at length about why I couldn't.
I got to tell you, I really think it helps the movie.
It's not a blow-off. I'd be happy to discuss this before. Whatever it is, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. I had read
that's the thing.
A draft of that Daredevil movie that on any level, a lot of fun to read. Like I really liked it.
Talk about if it was me, I would talk to you heartily.
This isn't about me, so talking about it is rude. And they were so nice. It was the first time I ever got a shout out in a movie. It was very, very sweet. So
that's right.
I was torn between how happy I was to be mentioned in the movie with my buddy David Mack and then it was that movie. But the point is,
you guys were fictitious opponents of Jack Murdoch's.
Yeah, and for me, it wasn't in the draft of the script I read. They put it in while they were filming, and I just started Daredevil while they were filming, and I had done enough on Daredevil to get the shout out. That was a huge win for me. They liked my Daredevil enough that I was included on the Frank Miller list. It was like, yes, and it was just cool.
Absolutely, and then of course the bonus stuff on the DVD.
Yeah.
You guys, Gene Colan.
Yeah, no, believe me,
John Romita Sr.
I was thrilled to be on that. I was thrilled.
Absolutely, man.
If you get DVD, I think it's probably on YouTube. If you get the Daredevil documentary, is fantastic.
This again, Rob Burnett, that Star Trek guy I mentioned earlier, he used to produce a lot of that stuff. He produced the X-Men ones for the Singer movies and the Aliens movies and stuff. And it's sad. He even said, he goes, with streaming. And also that people just want the movie and want the cheapest DVD possible and even Blu-rays. He's like, those kind of special features are going away.
They are, but they're taking a new form. I was literally just in a meeting as we were discussing how to do some kind of like Talking Dead type of show for Powers. Like, come here right now and we'll talk about what we just did kind of show. So it's just changing form as people try to find the best way to do it.
And you have no role for Principal Suntress in such an endeavor.
In what? In Powers?
In Talking Powers. I can't be your Hardwick.
I am
I'll lose weight.
personally inviting you. I am personally inviting you right here to the funeral of Retro Girl, which I'm producing. And I'm going to attempt to fill some of the pews with people we love.
Oh, that's really nice.
Do you want to get your ass down to Atlanta? You are cordially invited, wholeheartedly. Put on your funeral clothes and come on down.
How many days do you need me down there?
I don't know.
All right, because I'll try.
All right.
Thank you. That's Absolutely. Very sweet. I'm half teasing. I'm half teasing about Talking Powers. Only half.
I was going to do it privately, but why not do it on a podcast? We're looking for a way to get some of the readers and fans of the show down for the funeral as well.
That's awesome.
That would be a cool way. It's coming up fast. Yeah. I don't know how successful we'll be in doing that, but I thought that would be a nice
oh my God,
a nice tip of the yarmulke to our diehards. We're not going to fly anybody in, but
I hear you. Yeah. No, I understand that, but I can see what strings I can pull, and if it's God, if you could shoot on a weekend, I could say, oh man, absolutely.
Not on a weekend. I can tell you right now,
exactly. Never on a Sunday. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, gee, Brian, you've taken the winds out of my sails not being able to talk about any of this movie stuff.
I know, and I'm sorry. I did. Here's the thing: like, I did want to talk to you at length about why I couldn't. It's not a blow off. I'd be happy to discuss it. It whatever it is, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. That's the thing. It has zero to do with me on any level. So the stuff I can talk about, if it was me, I would talk to you heartily. This isn't about me, so talking about it is rude. Oh, and I signed an NDA, so it's actually illegal. So there you go.
All right.
There you go, Brian Bendis and Joe Quesada conversations from the last 10 years. I hope you enjoyed them. Again, where do we go from here? As they said at the end of the Buckley sing-along musical episode. I don't know. We've got Disney Plus and Marvel Television moving away from Netflix and moving away from Marvel Television altogether, and everything now being run by Kevin Feige, television, film, and comics. And again, not a bad thing. I'm excited, and I don't know what the future holds, but I think we've got great creative people in line. Steve Wacker getting his promotion as well. I love C.B. Cebulski. All the creative heads in Marvel, I'm okay with these changes and moving forward, but we'll see what happens. But I hope you enjoyed that look back, and maybe again gaining a little perspective of where we've come from in the last 10 years. Today's Word Balloon brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners via Patreon. Thank you greatly for your sponsorship and support, League. If you want to join the cause, Word Balloon is free. It'll always be free. But is it worth $1 a month to you? Is it worth the price of a comic book a month to you? If so, go to the Word Balloon Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on that Patreon ad on the front page of wordballoon.com. Thank you for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. Word Balloon also brought to you by Aftershock Comics. They are having a great holiday special on their online store. Everything that's there in their online store, half price through the end of the year. We're talking about signed and graded comics, graphic novels, convention variants, everything there. Plus, if you live in the U.S., shipping on orders of $50 or more are free. All you have to do is use the code HOLIDAY at checkout. And this is a great opportunity to purchase some Aftershock product, give them to your friends. I know that we're, within 48 hours of this release of Christmas. But, hey, man, Christmas, like I say, I claim the month for my birthday. Christmas, you do things on the 25th, you do things after the 25th. So this is a great chance to pick up something. Hey, also, if you're returning gifts and you've got some extra cash, here's a great way to spend it on some great Aftershock product. Things like Baby Teeth from Donnie Gates, and Animosity from Marguerite Bennett, and Tim Seeley's Dark Red. How about Jimmy's Bastards from Garth Ennis? Mary Shelley Monster Hunter, Abomination, a great book. The Rough Riders hardcover edition of Lock, Stock, and Barrel. Pretty neat stuff, man, from Aftershock Comics. Go to their online store and you'll find great deals. Everything in the online store, 50% off. And then also, if you live in the U.S., free shipping on orders of $50 or more. Use the code HOLIDAY at checkout, but go to their website and see it all, AftershockComics.com. Thanks again for listening to Word Balloon. We will continue with our look back at the past decade and some big highlights over the last 10 years from Word Balloon. I am so happy to have been observing what was going on in the comics market and film and television, and happy to represent these conversations to you. Until next time, have a great holiday week. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2019.